Good afternoon, everyone. Thursday, March 13th, we are about to start our board workshop. The board workshop, just item A. So, with that being said, Mike left. Yeah, well, she not here. April not here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Waiting on my secretary. Kind of started too quick. We don't have a quorum. We need a quorum. Okay. I said it already. I'm just saying roll call. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
District 4, President Stewart.
Present.
District 7, Vice President Gode. Here. District 1, Mr. Blue. District 2, Mr. Lannis. District 3, Ms. Powell Lewis. District 5, Mr. Lewis. Present. District 6, Mr. Russ. District 8, Ms. Sule.
Here.
District 9, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have B, discussion information, and we have a presentation.
All right, it's good to be here with you. I'm Jessica Swanson, and working with you all on this budget project this year. My colleague Natalie Treadgold is here with me as well. We're going to spend this hour going through the findings, recommendations, and action plan. We've got time built in for reflection and discussion, but if you have questions along the way, of course, feel free to ask those or ask at the end or approach us individually if you want to ask your question individually afterwards. We'll be low tech for our session. We don't need any materials other than this. You want to introduce yourself, Natalie?
Sure. Good afternoon. So nice to be with you all. I'm Natalie Treadgold. I've been working with Jessica on this project, specifically on family and community engagement aspects. I'm from DC, and my background is in family and community engagement in education. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, let's jump right in. So our objectives and agenda for this hour, we're going to keep it really moving. Like I mentioned, we're going to unpack the findings from all the data we've gathered on the budget process, structure, and policies. We're going to propose recommendations for these same areas, and then we're going to outline a proposed action plan to implement these recommendations. It's a lot to cover. We are going to keep it moving, and again, we're available afterwards if there are questions that we don't get to. So why this? Why now? Why are we doing this? The board was interested in enhancing transparency and ensuring that the budget reflects the board's priorities. And so we have worked with staff and with the board this year to refine the budget process and establish a foundation for continued enhancements. That's really what this project's been about. How you spend your money really matters, right? It reflects your priorities, so we're hoping to help you see that in the budget. So I'm gonna walk through a little bit about how we gathered the data. We reviewed a number of documents, so things like the district's website materials, the budget books, the annual financial reports, the financial policies, community engagement materials, spending and outcomes data, which we looked at together earlier. And I want to give a kudos to the district. There's a lot of data. Maybe sometimes it seems like maybe too much data, but there's a lot of data from which to pull. And so we appreciated that. Also, we conducted interviews. So each of the board members made time. We thank you for that. That's not a small thing. And also 10 members of the senior staff. So again, thanks to everyone who made time for that. It was really something we appreciated, everyone giving us that input. Natalie's going to walk through a couple of the other ways that we gathered data.
Yeah, so Jessica just described kind of her initial process of looking at what documentation existed to learn about how the budget process had gone historically, what the policies were and the process. And then in the fall and moving into the winter, we engaged the community to learn more about what the community would like to see in terms of how they want to be engaged in the process moving forward, and where they'd like to see funds directed in response to priorities that the district has identified, the board has identified, and that the community has identified. And so that engagement looked a couple of different ways. We did some in-person conversations. Thanks to Marlon for working so collaboratively with us to spend time with the advisory board. So we met with the parent advisory board, the staff, and students, and got some great feedback from them on the budget process and priorities. And then we also put on what we called a community conversation, which was an open event for anyone to come and share their perspective. And those groups were pretty intimate. They were small groups. We had some really great conversation, and they were also really representative. So we heard from, like I said, lots of different folks. We heard from representatives from 36 schools, from all sectors, from all grade levels. We heard from principals, bus drivers, teachers, and students as well, who are a really important voice in that. And then I will also say that through those, we also provided written opportunities for feedback. So for those folks that wouldn't be able to join in person, there was a feedback form and a survey when we heard from about 200 respondents on that form as well. And so through those avenues, I think that's a really good foundation to build on in the future, to think about how to continue to invite the community to weigh in on the budget process in the future.
And we would just echo again, we're thankful for staff for really jumping in with us on this. We meet with them weekly. They've been very collaborative, like Natalie mentioned, both the finance, engagement, and communications teams, and we just don't take that lightly, that they've provided so much support through this project. So let's jump into the findings. So first I'm going to share a summary, and then we're going to walk through in more detail. So the first finding we're going to talk about is that the process included limited opportunities for meaningful input. We heard this from several folks, and we're going to unpack it in just a moment, but there was strong consensus on key priorities, but folks wanted more accessible information and more structured opportunities for input earlier in the process and through multiple channels. A second finding that we have is that on the structure, that the current documents, while very complex and detailed, weren't accessible for all audiences, right? Not everybody found them to be in a way that they understood, and so we want to change that piece of it and think about how we can clarify how resources connect to priorities, simplified presentations that make it easy for lots of different audiences. And a third finding is that there was not a specific policy on ongoing reporting. So we're going to unpack these a little bit more as we go through, but that is the sort of summary of the findings, and now we're going to go through each one. And Natalie's going to share a little bit about some of the reflections we heard. And you wanted me to pull them all three up?
Yeah, can you all read the screen? Is it? Okay, so let's just take a second and you can read. You might recognize your own words up there. These are some of the quotes from the interviews that Jessica conducted and from our engagement. And I think the theme that we can pull out here is that there is a desire for increased engagement opportunities and an eagerness to weigh in earlier in the process so that it doesn't feel like a box check, so that there's actually opportunity to shift based on what is heard from the community.
So on the budget process, we mentioned briefly that the current timing limits input. And we heard this from some of the audiences, that there's a desire for this strategic approach. And typically right now, this is the calendar from last year. You can see that the budget is typically proposed in later May. And some of the district leaders noted that there's challenges because we're waiting on data from the state, right? That informs it. And other inputs to make the budget timing. It's tough to make it earlier, but right now that is a challenge also because the board would like to see it earlier, some of the community members would like to see it earlier, so there's more time for discussion. So that is a challenge that we've been facing, is the current timing, because we're waiting on these inputs so late, can make it tough to then get feedback on the proposed budget. And another thing that we noticed about the process is that there is not a dedicated review of student outcomes or board priorities as part of the process ongoing. These things may happen in the district, but not necessarily as related to the budget. So this was not part of the budget process specifically. And the third thing was that there was a real need for better community engagement. So including different kinds of opportunities for folks to weigh in. We heard from folks that they would like to see more online opportunities. They love to see detailed survey opportunities, lots of the different ways we started implementing already this year, but wanted to see more ways for folks to plug in different modes. So those were some of the things we heard on the process. And these are a few more of the quotes that we heard on the structure. Natalie's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. So you can take a second to read these as well. I think what sticks out to me here is the desire for accessibility. So I particularly like the top right quote. I don't know if that was someone in this room, but talking about additional context. And I think that's so important when we're talking about making the budget mean something to everyone, is that they need context. And I think in general, people want to know, like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my community, my school, maybe my classroom, my family? So trying to allow people to pull out those pieces that are meaningful to them and how the budget impacts their relationship, their orientation to the district.
We'll give you just a second more to read through those. And again, I know we're moving quickly, so feel free to interrupt us if you want to ask a question. On the structure, a couple of things. Again, we talked about this briefly as we talked about the overview. The communications right now are complex and lengthy. So the budget book is 345 pages. The comprehensive financial report, 226 pages. There's a lot of info. It's a lot, and it can be overwhelming and not necessarily in a parent-facing kind of format. So we're going to have an opportunity to address that finding as we think about how do we take all this rich content and make it really accessible for the public. But right now there's a lot of data and it's lengthy. And also that the school allocation model produces variation in spending. We looked at this a lot in January when we looked at the spending and outcomes data, right? So the structure itself of how we allocate funds to schools, it can produce that variation which may not be always as we intend. There's an opportunity to continue to refine that. And so a couple other things that we'd point out here, could be an opportunity for explicit connection between the board priorities and the strategic plan, more information on a multi-year view of the budget, more information on these school allocations, how do we give them out, right, to this question of the variation, and then more background on charter appropriations. These things came up in terms of budget structure. How do we fund charters? How does that work? What do we expect about it? What are the trends in the charter spending, the pass-through, so forth? These were some of the findings with the budget structure. On policies, the annual operating policy is limited mostly to the statutory requirements, and there is not right now an ongoing financial reporting policy. So these are from the review from the CAP site. So those are a couple of the findings on the policies related to budget. So we're going to pause for just a second and see if folks have any questions about these findings, anything that stands out, surprises, anything that's resonating. We'll kind of come to that next. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. We're going to go to recommendations next. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Gode?
Yeah, thank you. I think, to me, one of the key points that you hit was that there is a tremendous amount of data in our budget, but a relative lack of information, because data and information are not the same thing. And my feeling has always been that we have been focused on meeting the statutory requirements and the audit requirements without giving an equal or higher influence or emphasis on the strategic part of the budget. And to me, we've almost had it flipped. To me, the statutory and the audit provisions of the budget should be, yeah, we got to do that. And that's a kind of like something we got to do. But the real reason we do the budget is for the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And we haven't really gotten into that mode now, into this. And that's one of the things I've been trying trying to go through here. So I agree with a lot of what you said here, but what I think one of the key things is we have to unbundle that, unbundle the statutory audit piece mentality from the budget mentality that talks about kids, talks about strategic priorities, talks about those kinds of things. And then after you do all that, then you put it in the audit statutory framework, not the reverse. And so and you captured a lot of that in here, but I just wanted to be clear. I think that's what's been driving us on a lot of these things. Multi-year is fine. We ought to be doing that. We don't wake up in a brand new world every day. We ought to be able to do some multi-year, even though things are not perfect. And I think we also need to be comfortable with draft budgets, because if we ever going to get out of this bind, we're not going to know what the legislature is going to finally do. We're going to have to put in, here's the budget, here are these assumptions that go into making this budget, and recognize that the budget's going to change if the assumptions are changed. And we have to be careful, we have to be comfortable with that. And that's going to take a little bit of a shift. It used to be, well, I saw it in the budget, you know, it's there. And until we get away from that, we won't be able to break the bounds that we've set ourselves up in. So my pontificating, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Any other questions or reactions?
Yes, Coach.
I want to pivot back to something that Mr. Gode said.
Yeah.
Jessica, when you start reading this, why now?
Mm-hmm.
First bullet point.
Yeah.
You completely skipped over the last 4 words of that paragraph. You said, read it out loud.
For continued enhancements in the coming years or priorities for student success, which part?
You never said student successment. And that's just kind of the trend thought. It's all about numbers, data. And Mr. Gode just simply pointed out, we don't talk about children. So in all this work, you failed to mention the word student success. That's all.
Thank you, Coach.
Well, I hear you. We definitely, I think, are going to propose making tighter links between those conversations the district is having on what you want to do for students and the budget. Conversations are sometimes happening, not always in the context of budget, right? Any other reflections or questions? Maybe we'll get there, Mr. Lewis. We'll see. We'll see where we get there. So let's talk about recommendations. We're going to go through a high-level summary again and then unpack each one. The first one we would recommend on the process side, start earlier and more opportunities for structured engagement. On the structure side, more accessible communications and make explicit how the priorities are funded. And then on the policy side, update the policies for reporting to monitor resource use ongoing. So we're going to unpack each one now. So on the process, kind of similar to what you talked about, Mr. Gode, just a second ago, if we start early to allow more input and ensure readiness for school opening. So I agree with you that there's an opportunity to share some estimates, share what we know now, maybe what we don't know now, right? We know there's some inputs from the state that kind of come a little later in the process that might be ideal. The district can collect, data from the departments earlier, but I think that has definitely got to be part of it, is thinking about how can we come out with some drafts that may need adjustment and to ensure that it's ready for school opening. The other thing I would propose to you, I think this addresses your point a little bit, Mr. Lewis, is the district is already looking at the LEAP data in the summer and in the fall as you get those state reports. Let's put it in the context of budget, right? We're checking in, how are we doing on our strategic plan goals? Let's talk about then, what does that mean for what we want to spend the money on, right? We've identified priorities. Let's talk about that spending and outcomes data every year to talk about now what for budget, right? Like, what do our student needs indicate that we need to address, right? What are we now seeing in our data from our students? How does that change our strategic plan at all? Maybe our plan stays the same, we just keep going with it because it's addressing those needs. So adding that review of spending and outcomes yearly in the process for budget. And then making the board and community engagement part of the process. So we've built on some of those structures this year, like Natalie mentioned, using some of the structures the district had, like the advisories, to talk about budget, right? There was a structure there, but it wasn't necessarily used for the budget conversation. How can we build on that and use that and actually bring the budget into some of those other things that are happening already in the district?
May I
Yeah,
interject
before-
here?
mhm.
On the second bullet on that point, review spending and outcomes data yearly to inform budget investments. I really, one of the things, I come from a business background, it's just different, but I'd like to see us have a review like at mid-year and say where we are. And, you know, we get all of the monthly reports that we get now, and our reports tell us how much have we spent, how much did we spend 2 years ago, last year, this year, and how much we have left on this year's budget. But I'd like to kind of see, okay, last year through March, we spent X amount. Where are we through March this year? And start doing those comparisons, revenues and that, so you can compare where were we last year versus this year. And the reason for that is so we can see, are we really spending the money on the initiatives that we wanted to spend the money on? And is that money really going to those things to make those things happen? Because if I wait till the end of the year, it's too late to redirect or too late to do anything. But it's almost of this thing of, well, if it's in the budget, I'm going to spend it. And that's not necessarily true. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it. We can adjust it and do those sorts of things. But get more toward a dynamic view of where we are as opposed to just a static view of where are we compared to where we said we'd be at the end of the year. That makes sense?
Absolutely. Some districts also will take another look and sometimes even reallocate mid-year based on that new testing data, right? If the testing data, depending, it comes out a little earlier in Louisiana than some states. Some states, they're not getting it until like January, but they'll take a look at that time and sometimes make adjustments to their planned budget mid-year based on the latest data. And that could even be something as the district looks at its mid-year, its own assessment data, rather than even just waiting on the state. There could be tweaks along the way based on spending or based on what we're seeing in the student outcomes along the way. Some districts will make pivots during the year. Is it working? Maybe it's not. We need to change. We need to go deeper in this content area, this grade level, this subject, this subgroup.
Well, and to me, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, because say mid-year is going to be when we're talking about what the strategic priorities are for the next year based upon what we're seeing. And we shouldn't have to wait 6 months to start focusing on some of those strategic priorities if we can redirect some money in the budget we have today.
And I think there's not, whenever the district is considering what's our strategic plan priorities, progress, what does that mean now for budget, right? What are our progress on these priorities? What does that mean now for budget? Every time. We also heard from the community about their preferences. So Natalie will talk a little bit about what we heard from them in terms of what do they want from engagement.
Yeah, so in terms of recommendations for community engagement, I think the key here is offer a variety of ways for people to provide feedback depending on their preferred methods, their abilities, their capabilities, and so some, like I said, written online surveys or asynchronous opportunities where people don't have to be at a certain place at a certain time. People also expressed interest in more text messages, so sending quick surveys that they can fill out on their phone. I know that's something that the district is working on, but that was something that parents said they really liked and worked for them. We also heard specifically from the parents that were in attendance at the community engagement event that they would be interested in more online, so maybe a hybrid event or a virtual event, so that people could join from home while they're making dinner or while they're not having to worry about food or childcare. And then the other piece we heard was like the timing, and I mentioned this at the beginning, that people want an opportunity to weigh in when they feel like their voice is going to make a difference, and really closing that feedback loop to say, here's what we heard and here's what we did with it. That builds a lot of trust with the community. So you're not just taking their voice, you're coming back to them to say, like, here, we heard you and here's what we did. And acknowledging that, just because people want something doesn't mean it's possible or that it can be done, but having some transparency around that can also do a lot to build trust.
So in addition to this presentation, we're going to produce sort of a one-page summary of some of these things that we heard this season too, so that the district can share that back with families as part of this 26 budget release. So we're going to do that as well, because we did hear, like we said, a lot of feedback from families about their preferences. On the structure, so a couple things. We recommend making clear connections between the goals and the spending, right? There are strategic plan goals now that this board has come to consensus on. And so we think that that will be a real opportunity to show in the budget itself, how is the budget addressing those priorities. Second is an opportunity to describe a multi-year picture with a little more detail when there's cuts or additions. Why are we doing that? Is it because this had been funded on a federal grant that ended and now we're bringing it onto the operating fund? There's lots of context that can be added to just help better explain that sort of context about the budget. And then simple, comprehensive communications in multiple formats. Again, just so that folks can access and understand. The structure right now is pretty complex, so that folks can understand it in a way that makes sense to them and the way that they process information, whether that's graphical or tabular or narrative. There's lots of ways to present information. And then a timeline for related challenges. So there are a few other issues that came up in this data gathering that were related to the budget, such as the way that the schools are staffed, right? Staffing model. It's a big thing that obviously staff make up the biggest expenditure in our system. And so it is a financial challenge and one that can be tackled over the next couple of years. The salary scales, we heard a lot of feedback about wanting to make sure employees are well compensated. It's in your strategic plan. And then right sizing as the enrollment at the schools in this district as well as the whole state has declined, right? So there's an opportunity for right sizing. So these are all structural challenges for the budget over the next couple of years. So determining a timeline for tackling these related challenges, I think also another key. We also have here this QR code. This is one of the tools that we created, that picture of the little girl there. It's the community budget guide is one of the tools we've created to help make the budget easier to understand. We're working, we'll talk about it more in a second, we're working with the team though to build out some more of these resources to help make the content of the budget simpler for folks to access. And this is one of the tools that we started and we'll update again as we get the 26 data ready to go. Would also just highlight, as we heard from the board and the community, these are a bunch of the priorities we heard from the board and the community. And then the strategic plan process was happening at the same time, right? Sort of in parallel as we were gathering this data. And we were really pleased to see that the priorities that we heard as we were gathering this data aligned to what you have outlined in the strategic plan. So we would recommend aligning budget investments to the priorities of the plan, right? The things that we heard from you all in the ways we gather data were very much represented in that plan. So again, really focus on that investments in the plan and making those connections in the budget clear. How is this budget supporting the strategic plan?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I just scanned the QR code and I love how easy that is.
Yeah.
My only concern with it is it goes to Canva as a website. Is there a way to have it just go to EBR?
We can check
to
on that.
put that.
Yeah, I think it's embedded, but there might be a different way that we can talk to the team about posting it so it's not,
Like a
Yeah,
weird-
so that you're not having
yeah.
to go to Canva to see it. Or
Yeah.
maybe if it was within our own website.
It is on the budget website. If you go on the budget website page, it's like embedded on there too. But yeah, we can play with that for
Okay,
sure.
thanks, but I love it. That's the exact kind of thing we need.
Because you can text that link to a parent. And,
Yes.
And then once we have the new 26 budget proposal, it'll have the details for this coming year.
Yeah, and it has the links within it. So good. Thank you.
And we're going to talk about it more in a minute, but Kelly's team is really committed to adding more of the resources online in a way that's going to be easy for folks who want to go deeper, but if you want to stay at the summary level, to stay there. So Natalie's going to talk a little bit about, go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Good.
Yeah, quick question, and maybe this is for Ms. Lopez. When I look at our current budget and there's the general fund budget letter, is the content and structure of that dictated by statute, or is that something that we do the way it is?
No, and we're working on changing it.
Okay, because to me, that would be the key place to go through and do a lot of the stuff about how we attach to strategic implementation and all the. So
We're already working on it.
Okay, I didn't know if that was something that was
Yeah.
that was prescribed by law or audit or anything like that, because that's a good place to do it.
We started the outline for it, yeah, so we're working on that.
Okay,
Yep. The law is, I mean, the law is really around the timing and some of the pieces, yeah. Some of the requests we heard from stakeholders about how they would want to see the budget structured differently. we got a lot of feedback about wanting to better understand school allocations, whether that's like, why did my school get this? Oh, it's because, oh, your ESL population increased, or your students with disabilities decreased, and that's why you're getting more or fewer teachers, right? So there were questions about that, like why do magnet schools get this and they don't get that, or so forth, right? So adding more detail about how the schools get their resources could be a helpful structural shift. Also on funded programs, same thing. There's some of those special investments the district's made across programs, and there's questions about how could we be more detailed on those. And then also, again, the connection between the spending and the goals and outcomes. You know, what are we seeing in terms of some of these programs' outcomes? So those are recommendations for addressing those pieces. And then on the policies, 2 policy recommendations.
But before we get into that, can I interrupt you again?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry.
we welcome it. Go for it.
One of the issues that we have is that we get the federal funds coming in. Now, I don't know if DOEs can still exist after all this, but you know, we get all of these federal things coming in, and each of those need their own budget. And that's a requirement, and I get that. But how do we, one of the key things we need to do is find a way to be able to merge those dollars into our overall discussion. And I fully understand we need a general fund budget and we need budgets for each of those programs. But from a managerial point of view, we're managing the pot, not the individual vegetables in the pot.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that, to me, that's going to be one of the key barriers and hurdles that we need to get over as we go through this.
And as we've been working on this draft 26 budget book, we're proposing a summary table that includes all funds to that point, so you can see the whole totality of the budget. Yeah.
Coach?
Yeah.
Breakdown of school allocations. You gave the example of EL.
Students learning English, yeah.
So
English
like the last we had, when you were here before, we could go and hover over, I don't know, any school and you see $17,000 per child. Well, with those allocations, if I'm a parent and I have a kid there in special ed, will I be able to see, okay, sped dollars are allocated this way. English learners, we allocate so many dollars for English learners. Or is that getting too much to managing the vegetables in the?
Well, so some districts, what they'll do is, even if it's a simple summary table of last year's enrollment, this year's enrollment at the school, it's not making it personally identifiable, but you can show like this school's population of various different needs change, and that will then change the staffing. That's one way to sort of address it, is to say, you know, last year the school had 20 English learners, and this year they're going to have 40, so now we're adding another teacher to support those students. That is one way that some districts have made the school allocation picture clearer, because otherwise if we just say like, here's what you get this year, here's what you got last year, without that context, that's when sometimes parents are like, well, why is my school getting more? Why are we getting less, right?
Because
Nobody asks about why they're getting more.
a lot of times people think we're just throwing money out there.
Yeah. But why?
You know, why are we, I don't use the word throwing, but why are we throwing this amount of money here and this amount?
We welcome it. So on the policy side, 2 policy recommendations we would make. First is that the annual operating budget policy, that we add that review of spending and outcomes and establishment of board priorities to that policy. So that policy exists right now, but 2 simple things, again, to connect things that are already happening in the district to the budget process, marry those 2 together. There's already a lot of review of data that the district does every year, and there has been discussion about strategic plan, but making sure it's actually connected to budget, right? That we have those conversations in the context of what does that mean for our spending, so that it becomes part of the budget process every year as well. In the fall, the board can make sure that you coalesce on what are our priorities, and that informs as the staff works on the proposed budget. The second being setting an ongoing financial reporting policy. So right now there isn't one in your policies, and I think there's an opportunity to create something that the board will find useful and that makes it predictable for staff, ongoing, we know what to expect in terms of the reporting. I would suggest it could look like a monthly report with spending of all the funds, year-to-date spending compared to year-to-date last year at that point in time, so that everyone could have the same kind of predictable report ongoing, and we could see you know, how we're using the resources. I think that would be my policy recommendation, so I'd be happy to work with you all on that piece as well. Pause for any questions or discussion on that. Sounds like I'll be working with Mr. Gode on the policy. There you go. So let's talk a little bit about action plan. So we've outlined a little bit about how this could look in terms of what could be for this year for 26 and what could be for 27. So we're going to walk through 26 and then 27. And we've already mentioned that we added some of these engagement opportunities already this year. We've built on some of the structures like advisories that the district can carry forward and use in future years. And we were already just talking with Marlon before this, when are the dates for the fall? Like, let's get on the calendar now. He's already got those plans in place. You also might wonder who's going to own all these steps. So I'm really glad this engagement includes support with implementation. So I'll be working with Ms. Lopez and the team. So we're not just going to bring these recommendations and kind of walk out, peace out, good luck. We're going to keep working on it this spring and start executing on this action plan. So we're going to be working on these pieces. So first is the engagements. We've already conducted engagements like Natalie outlined. We've gotten some feedback on how that could be enhanced even more next year, and we'll outline that kind of calendar. We've already done the review of spending and outcomes for this year, as you've also dug deep in the strategic planning. Working on proposing how can we get to an earlier timeline. So we were actually just talking about it earlier today. How can we bring some of those data of what's known and what's unknown at this point so that the board can start understanding a little bit earlier this season what the potential investments are in these goals that you've set. On the structure piece, we are working on these new communications products. We've already got that community guide, which we showed. We've developed a new FAQ, a frequently asked questions. It's on the budget site. Going to keep adding to both those and enhancing them as we have 26 data. Working on a new executive summary for the budget. And I think that will hopefully make things more accessible for more audiences, as we've heard from a lot of folks. We're also going to draw a clear line between those investments in the goals that you all have set. So make it really explicit. Here's what the goals were. Here's how much we're spending on literacy. Here's how much we're spending on early childhood. These investments that you've outlined in your strategic plan. And then the last piece this spring, would like to work with the board to refine those financial policies. So for 27, one thing I'll say too is I'll also bring you another written update by the end of this fiscal year on the progress on all these items as we work on them with the team. So, 27 and beyond. So what can this look like for the next budget cycle? Some of these things are a little bigger to tackle. So first would be, again, setting those board priorities in the fall next year after the review of data. Probably at that point, it's how are we doing on the strategic plan? How's it going? Do we need to make any tweaks? Based on what we know now, we've got some new data coming in about our students' performance and so forth. That would be the first thing, setting that in the fall. Adding the live online budget community conversation. Like Natalie mentioned, we heard a lot of feedback, interest in having an online option as well, trying it out. And maybe it ends up not being something the district wants to carry forward, but it'd be worth trying because there was interest in it. And then creating a video overview of the budget process. It can be simple, but we also heard from folks along the way that might be another way for folks to engage who might struggle with some of the other methods that are currently available that are in written format. On the structure, adding more school by school allocation narrative. So this one is like a little bit more of it adds a lot more detail for the team to write these, but I think it will be good context for future to add more of that narrative around each school. And so it's a bigger leap. And then also thinking about readiness for these other shifts on staffing model, salary scale, and school facilities portfolio, like which schools are going to be right-sized.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing this information. In regards to the school-by-school allocation narratives, will there be like a framework that will be used to determine what those narratives look like, or?
Yeah, I think we can offer a few examples. Like I mentioned, some districts will show it in sort of like a table of enrollment this year, enrollment last year, kind of explaining it that way. Other districts will write sort of a short narrative for each school in a sort of a paragraph. I think there's a couple of models and we could figure out what might make sense, but just adding a little bit of context so it's not just, here's your staff for this year, but there's a little bit of the why, because there obviously is a lot of thought that goes into the why. It's just not always conveyed then in the book.
Please and thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, I guess we rushed it too fast. Any other questions that we want to have here? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we are available, so if anything else does come up, please reach out, and we'd be happy to chat more.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so
for
much.
having us.
And so that concludes item B, and so now we go for adjournment.
Got 20 minutes. Yeah, the council does. So you heard the council.
Thursday, March 13th, 2025, Committee of the Whole meeting will now come to order. Tonight, we'll have the invocation will be led by Board Member Powell Lewis, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by School Board Member Cliff Lewis.
Let us stand. And if I can take just a point of personal privilege, I know this person does not want me to do this, but we do have to say happy birthday to our Madam Secretary. Today is her birthday, so happy birthday to you, Miss
Happy
April.
birthday, April. Happy birthday, April. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Okay, now she is turned blood red. We love you.
Thank you.
Amen. Let us go into prayer, and as we begin our prayer, let us make sure that we take a moment of silence to acknowledge those that have experienced tragedy in our school system. Let us pray. Gracious and loving Creator, we come before you today with hearts full of gratitude for the opportunity to gather and serve the children, families, and educators of this community. We ask for your wisdom to guide us as we make decisions that will shape the future of our schools and empower the leaders of tomorrow. Grant us clarity of thought and compassion in our words and actions. May we be ever mindful of the needs of those we represent, and may our discussions be rooted in understanding, collaboration, and a deep commitment to the well-being of every student in our care. Help us to approach each matter with open hearts and minds, always seeking what is best for the children entrusted to us. Let us be a reflection of your love, grace, and patience as we work together to build an educational system where every child has the opportunity to thrive. We ask for your guidance in the decisions we make today, for strength and unity in our efforts moving forward. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
First of all, thank you.
And please note that I saved everyone because I did not sing.
Appreciate it. District 4, President Stewart.
Present.
District 7, Vice President Gode.
Here.
District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 2, Mr. Lannis. District 3, Ms. Powell Lewis.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
District 6, Mr. Russ.
Present.
District 8, Ms. Sule.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Martin. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Coming. I'm not getting my meeting to show up. I'll get this fixed in a second. First, we have item B1, fiscal transparency report for information only. Are there any comments from the board on the fiscal transparency report? Next, we have the item C1, school presentation. Superintendent Cole, it's yours.
Thank you very much. This evening, I'm going to ask our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Edwards, to come up and present who's going to be with us this evening. Where is Ms. Edwards? So this evening, I think we have all of these individuals you see in these blue blazers are going to be here with us tonight. So I'm going to ask Mr. Webb to come on down. And tell us what school he's representing. I think we all know, but.
I don't know.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent, Vice President.
Is that microphone on?
Testing, better? All right, good evening. We are truly excited to be here this evening to represent McKinley Senior Magnet High School. And this evening, I'm going to start with our presentation. First, I need to say this. We are a school, one, that expect greatness at 212 degrees. We tell our kids that every day because we want them to know that at 211 degrees, water gets hot. It's hot, but at 212 degrees, water is boiling and it creates steam. And steam can drive a locomotive. And driving a locomotive is nothing you can't do or stand in your way. So we always expect greatness at 212 degrees. But I definitely could not do this alone. I have an amazing team and staff, and I will be the first to say I have the best staff in East Baton Rouge Parish. So they are truly amazing. And I have them with me here this evening. Excuse me. First, I want to start off with our mission. The mission of McKinley Senior Magnet High School is to inspire and empower students to discover, think, create, achieve, and graduate college and or career ready. Our vision, the vision of McKinley Senior Magnet High School is to close all achievement gaps while preparing students to become productive citizens and ensuring they can compete globally. This is the Big Blue. Today, tomorrow, forever. As you see on our pictures, this is our graduating class, and it is imperative that we move them beyond high school and ensure they are ready to meet all things that will come before them. And again, our team is here. We have Ms. Jackson, my assistant principal. We have Ms. Drake, my assistant principal. We also have our instructional specialist, Christine Henry, and we have one of our deans, which is Ella Rito. So again, I want to thank them for being here. I also want to thank my wife for being here to support Dr. Webb. So thank you. Oh, Miss McKinley is here. Stand up, Miss McKinley. We are truly excited. Again, we have an amazing school, and it's one of those schools that, one, it has legacy. McKinley is a school that in 1907 it was established, and it is the oldest black high school in the state of Louisiana that graduated the first 4 females in 1916. And I need you to understand, McKinley is a generational school because it is truly generations that come through McKinley still. Even my family, from my grandmother who finished in 26 all the way to my cousin, I have 5th generation at McKinley now. So it is definitely a generational school. So we want to show you exactly where we are and where we headed. So when we look at our enrollment, ninth grade, we have 159. Let me just speak to ninth grade for a second. This year was the first year that we moved as magnet status. When we moved as magnet status, we picked up several magnet kids. McKinley does not have a direct middle school feeder, but I need you to know we picked up several of our students once we became magnet that shifted over from McKinley Middle Magnet because we have a really strong arts program, so they came to McKinley for our arts program to include our gifted and talented and our great scholars. 10th grade, we have 151 students, 11th grade, 143, and 12th grade, we have 161. Go through our data. When we look at our SPS index to see where we are, as you see in 2023, our assessment, we were at 26.7, and this year our assessment, we were at 29.6. Our progress, we're at 71.3. This year we're 71.7. ACT 39.5. Now we're 30.1. Our interest and opportunities 136.1. Currently we are at 150. Strength of diploma 74.1. Now 71. Graduation rate 60.1, and we're at 56.3. When we looked at our targets to see exactly where we grew and where we had challenges, we noted that our growth was 2.9 points proficiency in English, geometry, and U.S. history. We also had growth in ELA and math, and our interests and opportunities grew 13.9. The challenges we saw was decreased by 9.4 for our projected strategic adjustment for ACT and work keys, and our strength of diploma decreased 3.6 points and increased dual enrollment opportunities. And we had a decrease by 4.2 points with our graduation rate, which what we're doing now is tracking every student. Last year when we began, it was challenging as it related to looking at our ACT, looking at our work keys, and determining how do we increase that. So just to let you know, currently, just with work keys by itself, last year we finished with 28% of our kids that have silver or better. Currently, as of today, we have over 40% of our kids with work keys with silver or better. So we are definitely moving that in the right direction. One of the biggest things, because initially when we looked at our data, because of where we were with our assessment, we looked at it to have an increase. But let me say something to you. What really is challenging is dropout rates. That is a challenge. When you have students, one, you have no idea where that kid is, where they went, and us coming in, we didn't even know the kids, right? So we have no idea where those kids are. But I need you to know, when we came in, we had 132 kids that we were looking for on dropout rate. We have gotten that number down to 70. We at least know where those kids are, and we can focus on now our 70 to see where they are, to again continue to move that dropout rate down. When we look at our dropout rate, we found that a large percent of our dropout rates focus on 10th grade. So we definitely have to, we're having them in 9th grade, 10th grade we're seeing a decline, and it kind of levels off for 11th and 12th grade. So we have to ensure that we are keeping up with our kids and ensuring that they are in school all the time, coming to school and being engaged. And we're losing them at 10th grade. So we are focusing on that area. We have broken it down to look at all of our subgroups with the graduation rates and to see exactly where it is we're losing kids. And I will tell you, there is a direct correlation for the kids that drop out and the kids that have absences. When it comes to our programs, we have arts audiovisual, technology and communication, music production, broadcasting, TV and film, dance, music, theater, studio art, choir, band, gifted, talented, magnet, great scholars. We also have transportation. Our automotive department is amazing. They go out and they work in the automotive community and they do internships. We have been invited to come to New Orleans, and we will be taking a group of kids that will go, and they've offered them internships to work on the streetcars in New Orleans. So we are really excited about that. With our LA pre-educator, this is truly important because this is the point where we are training kids to be teachers, social workers, counselors. They will have an opportunity to leave high school with an associate degree, 2 years, go 2 years of college, and where we can do a turnaround and bring them right back in our educational system. So this is truly an important work for us. Again, I shared this information earlier about our work keys. We are definitely seeing improvements and growth there with our work keys and our ACT, and our percentages with Mastery in Advance with our LEAP. So we are ensuring that we are doing what needs to be done to engage our kids, engage our teachers, and make sure that learning and teaching is taking place. The Big Blue experience, it is truly amazing. Our kids love their school. From volleyball to soccer to football, cheer, dance, our courts, girls and boys basketball, they do an exceptional job. And they believe in what we're doing. We have truly shifted the culture of our school, and we see it. So we are making differences and changes in kids' lives. This is our contact information, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, and please come out. We welcome you to McKinley anytime you want to come. And I open it now for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Sincerely appreciate the presentation. You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you very much. Board Member Powell Lewis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Webb. You know, as you spoke, of course, all I thought about was you were the first individual to give me a high school teaching job, so I appreciate that. At the Bel Air High. Of course, I know you're wearing the blue right now.
Yes.
I do have some questions. One of them is about the dropout rate. You mentioned how you all were able to reduce that number, and I wanted to ask, what has been the process that you've used for locating the students, just so that in the case there are other principals who are dealing with similar issues, which we know that there are, and then also what was the general age range of the 10th graders that were not showing up for class?
Okay. To your first question, let me say, by any means necessary. We hit Facebook, we started doing all social media. We began asking the kids in the classroom, hey, you know where Jeremiah is? They were like, yeah, you know, he's at such and such school. Then we would contact the school and see if Jeremiah is there. I mean, whatever we had to do to locate the kids. And the challenging part, it was because we were new there, we didn't know the kids. So I never put eyes on the kid, you know, but we're trying to locate them. So when I tell you we did everything from where we would ask teachers, have you heard where this kid is? Kids, where they are, social media, whatever it took to locate those kids. And like I said, we got those numbers down from 132 to 70, which was a challenge. And now, but the difference being now, we know our kids. So if we have a kid that leaves, first of all, we're going to find out why they left. We doing house visits. What's going on? Why aren't you at school? You know, so, but we actually know the kid now. But those are just the type of things you just have to do what you have to do for children.
And thank you, and what was the general age of those 10th graders, I guess, that would go MIA or not show up?
So it was a range. The kids range anywhere between 15 and 18 years old. And we really tried to take our kids that are over age and connect them to our hips, because we know that we have little time with them, right? As they continue to move through our system, we know that if they are 18, 19 years old in 10th grade, we're about to lose them. So one of the things that we did was we did a request to just have the after school on our campus for our kids to go after school and continue the education instead of drop out.
Okay, well, thank you. My other two questions was just simply about the Louisiana Pre-Educator Program. I wanted to know if you guys were connected to Educators Rising, and then also if you were aware of the paraprofessional certification that our kids can get, and have you guys started that process?
So the answer to those three is yes, yes, yes. We have connected with Educators Risers. We've used their curriculum as well. And as it relates to partnerships too, we've connected with Southern University to partner with them to assist us with the courses that we'll be offering. And we do know of the para program that they're offering, because we have introduced that to our children as well.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Board Member Sule?
Yes. Hi, Principal Webb.
Hello, how you doing?
How long have you been at McKinley?
2 years.
You guys, I don't know that many of you know this, but I just met Mr. Webb about a month ago. We got to do a community meeting together and literally met as we were walking up in front of all of the people. And Principal Webb, you are doing a phenomenal job. And since meeting you, I've actually been doing some homework and studying more about McKinley. And I am so grateful for what you're doing at that school and the way that you're loving kids and making a difference, and your staff and going after those kids and finding out why they're not in school. And thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Russ?
Principal Webb, thank you for your presentation. I got to find out where y'all get these awesome blue blazers and how you get one for so many kids. Y'all look great, but it shows that you have a really strong culture at McKinley, and I know McKinley is a very important school to our community, so thank you for the work that you're doing. Some of my questions got answered, so I think my only question was, do you guys have any kind of freshman on track program or freshman academy program that you're using?
So the answer to you is yes. We do have a freshman program, and what we're doing now, when we schedule our freshmen, we schedule them according to the cycle that we need them to fall into, so we can track them as well. It's just really important. That's one of the most important years for our kids, to keep them on track and not lose them, because as I stated earlier, we lose our kids. The highest dropout rate is 10th grade. So we have to keep them motivated and engaged in their 9th grade year. So what we are doing with our 9th graders, even though we don't just separate them, but we've given them their own core of teachers that deal with them on a daily basis. And not everybody agrees with this, but I always felt if we have our best teachers teaching 11th and 12th graders, that's not where I need you, right? So I have my best teachers that are engaging our kids and that are nurturing our 9th graders in the 9th grade classes. I have them in the 9th and 10th grade, you know. And sometimes it gets to a point where, you know, some educators will say, hey, look, I've done my time. I want to just teach seniors. But I need you to teach where I need you. Right? And if we're losing them in 9th and 10th grade, that's where I need you to teach. Because I know you have that nurturing spirit. I know you have the experience that you need. I know you have the knowledge base, and I know you're not going to give up on them. And with those reasons, this is why I need you here.
Great. Thank you for telling me about that. I guess my last question is just your feelings about, you know, the short-term move to Kenilworth, and I know that can be a big change, can be hard for the faculty and all the students to have to move from your home building. It sounds like there's a good plan, but I would just love for you to share, how you plan to attack that and keep your school culture strong.
Yes. So let me first start off by saying we've been meeting weekly with Ms. Anderson and her team, and also the different individuals that are assisting with the move. And it's really important. Even though we're moving to come back to something even greater. And that's what we keep our eye on the prize of why we're moving and what we're coming back to. So with that being said, I want you to know that they are doing a great job as assisting us with the move, making sure that it stays as seamless as possible. So it's really important. We have contacted all individuals, our parents, all of our caregivers, our kids know, our community know, our alumni know. They know that we are about to move, and they understand the reason why we're about to move. Because again, we're about to create something great. And our kids should have a place when they drive up to school, and it's not only welcoming, but it makes them feel good to be there. They spend the majority of their time awake at school. So that should be their home where they feel good about being home. And whatever, we do everything with our eyes, whether it's eat, go to school, whatever it is. If we look at something that looks good, it usually tastes a little better, right? So that's the same thing with going to school. It should have a presence and a beauty just to feel, I feel good to come to school. So again, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. Once we get there, we'll be there and continue to do academic great things with our kids.
Thank you. I know we'll all be real excited when there's a new McKinley High, and sounds like you've got a really strong grasp of the challenges at the school, and I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Known you for a long time, you're a veteran principal. I'm sorry. I thought everybody was looking at me. You're a veteran principal, and you stepped in at McKinley at a time when we really needed you to do so. We were having a few challenges. You stepped in, stepped up, assembled an outstanding team. I visited your school a number of times this school year because not only does it mean a lot to the community, it means a lot to the school district in terms of what happens there. So you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and we're expecting greatness at 212 degrees, not only from the students, but from you as well.
Yes.
So continue to push and ensure that the school is great.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Next, Board Member Lewis.
Hey, Mr. Webb,
How you doing, Mr. Lewis?
kind of help me out a little bit. That dropout rate impacts your graduation rate, right?
Yes, it does. Yes,
So
sir.
I don't want nobody to look at those numbers and say, oh, they're not graduating kids. If you got to look for 130, you taking a hit.
For every one of them.
For every one of them, you're taking a hit. So I think people need to understand that so many other things impacts that graduation rate besides kids graduating.
Yes.
And one thing I do know from experience, y'all looking for those kids at 212 degrees too.
We are.
You know, been there, done that. So I know you're looking for them, and I know when you find them, they will be glad that they were found. And again, I'm just waiting for the new building.
Yes.
We'll come down there and have a good time.
That's it.
Thank you. President Stewart.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do as well. You and I had talks previously, and I wanted to make sure that you highlight and let the community also know about your GED program.
So it is an amazing program. And that's what I was saying. When we looked and we saw we had kids that were dropping out, we looked at where our kids would have to go. Some of our kids would have to come all the way to Goodwood and Sherwood to the Crystal McCullough to come to the GED program. That wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. So we did a request to have our GED program on our campus, and they approved it. So now we are now graduating kids in our GED program that will come directly from our school or they can come out of the community, but it's right there at McKinley. And it is a great program for our kids.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that to
Yes.
let people know that there are a lot of other awesome things too besides what you mentioned, and I think that that was one of them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lannis.
Brother Webb,
How you doing, Mr. Landis?
how you doing this evening?
Doing well, sir.
First, I'm gonna tell you, you do look good in blue. I think you look better in red and black, but we can settle for that. I don't want to merely say congratulations to you because I feel like it downplays what your whole attitude is about in terms of the field of education. Your expectation is always academic excellence. So my hats goes off to you tremendously. Since I've known you, just when you took over Struma, when it was with RSD, from the time you moved there, you went to other campuses, and the academic excellence that followed you, it just precedes you, and it's eluded in everything that you do. I love the uniformity of what you all are doing at McKinley, because what happens at the top says a lot about what happens at the bottom. If the students see you leading and see your staff leading, they want to be leaders as well. Is Pastor Dale Flowers in the building? No, I saw him. This is everything that we fought for. I want the McKinley alumni to know that. I want McKinley to know that. I want you to know that. I can't wait till you step inside that new building. And I want people to understand we didn't fight because we wanted to fight the system. We fought because we knew that equity, what it should look like and what it should be about. And when you all step back into that building and you see those bright faces and you see the community smile again in old South Baton Rouge, it's going to be a beautiful day. And I just want to say kudos, hats off, and continue the great work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Principal Webb, you're in my district, so I get to go see you
Yes, sir.
sometimes. And one of the things that I think that should not be overlooked, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, about changing the culture of the school. And that's one of the biggest changes I see in McKinley since you have been there, is changing the culture. It's very unique to go to a meeting with Principal Webb because he's got this big long table, and at one end of the thing there might be a couple of assistant principals doing one thing and stuff like that, and you're sitting at the other end talking with Principal Webb, and kids are coming in to get cold water and all this sort of stuff out of his office, which he keeps there for the kids. And just the sense of community and camaraderie that you have developed in that school in a very short period of time is exemplary.
Thank you,
And so beyond just the academics, I know the academics are the most important thing, but the academics build upon the culture. And culture is one of the hardest things to change. So congratulations, good luck. There's a lot of work left to be done, but you and your team are certainly up to it. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Webb.
Thank you.
Get back to it.
Now you're cooling off a little bit, so go turn the heat back up now. I thought we were getting invaded by Duke or something here.
Look, he got to come back on now.
So, just to say, each one of you all received a bag, and in that bag, you have a McKinley T-shirt. You also
okay,
have a
okay.
McKinley pen. And I don't want to make any district angry with us, but this is just the big blue way.
Okay.
So we expect you all to wear your McKinley,
Thank
and we just want to say thank you for the job that you do for our children every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish I could wear it.
And I want to take a point of privilege. I'll put this blue shirt on, even though, you know, mine is the red and gold. I'll wear this blue. If my coach can put that blue blazer on, I can put the red and gold.
There you go. Thank you.
Mr. Webb, I was in a meeting with your assistant principal this morning, not knowing you were bringing me a shirt tonight, and I asked her when I saw her, where's my T-shirt? So I'm glad y'all got it to me this
We
morning.
already
Glad
had
you
it
got
planned for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is item C2, the salary presentation by SSA Consulting.
Good evening, school board members, and thank you for taking some time to listen to us today. So what we have today is sort of a high-level analysis on the compensation system and how it is affecting your retention of school-based staff members, and some information and overview about how it sort of compares across the state, nationally, and then what we can do next to sort of address it. So With that being said, we'll kind of move along here. So we were engaged by the leadership to complete an analysis on the current state of the compensation system for school-based positions. And then I want to say thank you to the school system staff for providing information and data so quickly on the front end of this. So we had something that we could analyze and review effectively, and everything was well organized. And thank you for providing that information. The focus of this presentation is to provide an overview of the current state of the recruitment and retention for EBR school system. And then we have crafted a few recommendations and next steps for you to address some of the foundational compensation issues. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few minutes. So what we looked at the current positional pay scales. We also looked at the compensation policy documentation. And we also looked at historical recruitment and turnover information, all of which we will review today. Like I said, we got some information gathered from your own school system. We also looked at regional peer agencies as well, so other school systems around the capital region. We also looked at a recently completed statewide analysis on teacher compensation. We compared your data to best practices regarding pay administration and market information. This text is a little small, so I'll make sure I read it out loud. The school system struggles to retain teachers past their initial few years of employment. The current average attrition rate for teachers is nearly 23%. This represents an enormous cost of continuously having to retrain teachers as institutional knowledge is lost. The pay ranges for EBR teachers are severely compressed. The average wage growth for a teacher within the bachelor's pay scale over the course of 20 years or 20 levels is 9%. This is a significant contributor to the inability of the school system to retain teachers effectively. EBR pay ranges are overly complicated. There are a few too many pay ranges for single positions, which complicates compensation calculations and administrative management of the pay scales. Current steps on the pay ranges are not indicative of the experience or skill within the position, and they're not accurate indicators of wage growth over time. And it can be difficult to convey to prospective employees how their pay will increase over time as they continue to be a teacher within the school system. Current steps on the pay ranges are based on single dollar amounts, which are not conducive to compensation growth over time. So those are our major findings from this. Let's talk a little bit more about those retention rates. So based on the data provided by EBR staff, each year the school system loses nearly 23% of all employees on the TE or TI pay scales, which includes teachers, school counselors, librarians, therapists, and specialists. Additionally, for newly hired employees, the attrition rate is nearly 68% after 5 years. So that's almost 70% of all individuals hired are leaving the school system after only 5 years. The turnover rate is unsustainable for any organization which hopes to be performant or provide any sort of organizational stability. Nationally, the average turnover rate for teachers within a school system is approximately 16%, with about 8% leaving the profession entirely and 8% leaving for another district. Which that turnover rate nationally is also high, but we are above that national benchmark. So on average, teachers in the southern region of the United States, as defined by the Southern Regional Educational Board, or SREB, receive annual increases in salary of approximately 2.1% based on an average 20-year step program. On the 2024-2025 salary schedule for a 9-month teacher with a bachelor's degree in EBR, each step represents a $225 increase. At the beginning of the pay scale, this represents a 0.5% increase, and this percentage increase only decreases the further along an employee moves along that pay scale. By progressively increasing teacher pay as they move throughout their career, EBR can significantly reduce the cost of turnover, which according to recent data can cost approximately $25,000 per teacher for a large urban district. So it is expensive whenever we have high rates of turnover. Steps on the current pay plan are not directly indicative of the current years of experience or performance in position, and that makes it tough for us to understand as we're analyzing the pay scales and where employees currently fall as far as which steps they're on, as to why they were placed on that step, and how they can move through the scales appropriately. So between level 0 and level 20, a 9-month teacher can expect the following overall percentage increases in wages. So if you start on level 0 and you move up to level 20, your pay increase your total pay will increase by 9% with a bachelor's degree, 17.5% with a master's degree, and 16.7% with a PhD, ED degree. Or education. This mirrors trends in statewide teacher pay compression. According to a recently completed report for the Louisiana Department of Education, on average across the state, teachers can expect to see almost a 30% increase in wages, which is lower than the national average of 44.5 and lower than the southern regional average of 41.7. So we are significantly lower than the statewide, national, and southern regional averages. So what do we do about it? We just need to overhaul the pay scale systems. We need to overhaul the administration of them, how they work, the functions of each of the steps, and we need to align them to be closer to market best practices to increase our retention rate. The first thing we need to address is to provide for appropriate compensation growth within position over time, which will provide appropriate career growth and reduce range compressions. The steps within the ranges should be adjusted away from single dollar amounts and instead be based upon percentages to provide consistent growth, as mentioned in bullet 1. And then the overall number of pay scales should be decreased and incentive programs installed to address any educational achievements. EBR should address how employees are moved through their position's pay range to ensure that steps accurately represent either length of time in position or achievements in performance. And then EBR should also introduce a dedicated process for reviewing all wages annually. This process should include a comprehensive review of the changes in cost of living and inflation over the course of the previous year, and standardized indexes should be consulted when completing the review. Okay, that is it. Questions?
Board Member Powell Lewis.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your report. My question is about, in your presentation, you mentioned that we should be looking at increasing salaries by percentage.
Yes, ma'am. Whenever I say percentage, so currently on our STEP program or our level program, each year an annual increase, if the levels were to directly correlate with an annual increase, is a set dollar amount of $225 specifically.
Correct.
And this dollar amount doesn't change on the entirety of this pay scale until you reach the 21-year experience mark, and then you move to a different pay scale. But that is also still a set dollar amount. But if you move away from a set dollar amount and instead set a percentage, wages will grow more consistently over time. And so that way, you know, a 2% increase one year compounds upon itself for the next year. And then it compounds upon itself for the next year, which will then provide a steady increase in wage growth over time for teachers, providing sort of a career path. And not just teachers. When I say teachers, all of the pay scale staffs that are associated with these things that kind of have that.
So thank you. My reason for asking that is, are we able to compare data from other districts in regards to those that use this percentage mechanism?
Yes, absolutely. There are, I would say, about 60% of school districts that we've looked at recently have moved to the percentage system versus 40% that are still hanging on to the single dollar amounts. I would also like to say that once again, statewide, we're not doing great generally with pay compression. And so it is a good idea to make sure that we look at our peer agencies, those that are around us, those that are larger school systems across the state. Also look outside the state as well. Maybe some other districts which mirror our demographic makeup, our school system, and that we can sort of take ideas from. So I think that we should make sure that we broaden our perspective.
Okay, and I don't know if this question or this request is for you or for our EBR staff, of, is it possible to share some of those comparisons with us in regards to what other districts are doing in regards to this idea of using the percentage rate?
So I think, and I think that is the key for the next step, right? So I think the next step after this one is to come up with a proposed pay plan for all positions across EBR. And whenever you come up with your proposed pay plan, then you would have, your documentation about why you move from this to that. And then you could use these comparisons to effectively, support your statement. You're absolutely right. Because I think that whatever system you move towards, you need to make sure that you have a solid reason for doing so. And then at least some institutional, knowledge and back end that we can use to support that.
Thank you. So I look forward to seeing that. Also, whomever has led this work, I believe it might be Mr. Godin. Thank you so much. One of my thoughts that has just completely resided with me during this presentation is I would always tell people with a teacher, we hardly make enough money to say that we can survive and have a decent quality of life. And so when all else fails, I would tell them to go back to school, which generally that means that you take out a student loan. And then that means that you still owe that money, but that's the only way that you could get the increase was if you said that you had a master's degree or a PhD, which, that should not be the only way that you get a decent salary. So thank you so much for initiating and completing or working on this process, and thank you so much for your support.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Board Member Rust.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks to SSA for putting this together for us, and also to Vice President Gode. I know you worked real hard on some of this as well, and I know this particular issue has come up pretty much constantly as long as I've been on the board, and I think it's got to be forefront. When you really break it down the way that you had in our current pay scales, we're effectively, due to the past 5 years of inflation, paying our teachers less and less every year. That $225 step essentially ends up as a negative by the time a teacher might receive it every year. And it's very indicative of like the pressure on the middle class right now with inflation. Like wages are not keeping up with inflation by a long shot. And so we have to get aggressive about how to solve this because, as we know, we can't keep enough teachers in the classroom. And these attrition rates, I knew they were bad, but that's staggering. And I've talked with Superintendent Lamont, loosely about some of those problems and what we could hope to do. But I think the first step is making sure that we're paying people well, we're paying them fairly, and we're paying people in a way where they know where their salaries are going to grow as they invest in their tenure and in their education. So I would be really supportive to see what the next steps would be in this. And I guess the only question I might have for either SSA or for superintendent is outside of tenure and I guess educational milestones, where do things like evaluations and merit factor into our pay scales? Because that's what I'm not hearing in this equation.
I'm going to ask Ms. Lopez to start walking this way, but it's my understanding that merit and evaluations are incentive pays once those evaluations have been completed. I don't think we have a system built for there to be salary increases based on merit and evaluation. But would you like to expound more? Did I do good enough?
You did great, sir. You're correct. There's stipends based on highly effective and proficient.
Right, and so I'm aware of those, and what I would hope that we would consider as we're looking at this is getting really aggressive with retaining our highest performing teachers. I think we've taken some steps in our past budgets to do that, but I think we can do a lot more in being really targeted with really rewarding our most effective teachers. Thank you.
Vice President Stewart.
Thank you. And I just have a comment, rather. I just want to express that upon joining the board leadership, that was one of the first things that I suggested to take a look at was the pay scale. And Mr. Gode and I have had several conversations, of course, because he's taking the lead role on that, and to find out that our pay scale has not been reviewed since before 2000. And so it's 2025. And so I wanted us to take a look at that because, of course, as you all know, that we are short of staff and faculty. And because of that shortage, we needed to take a look at how do we appease and satisfy those that we existingly have in our system. And with that, I looked at, of course, pay is always something that will get someone's attention, but also that same faculty and staff that we currently have would be the best marketing tool for other staff to come in. Who would be best to advocate and market for other staff and teachers to come on to EBR, but the existing ones that we have? And so that was a part of, you know, one of the things that I said that would be something that we needed to do. The first things is to look at the pay scale and to make sure that we were adequately paying our staff so that we can retain them and then acquire more. So this is something that I think is long past overdue, but I'm glad that it's being done right now. And so I just wanted our staff and faculty to know that we do care about you guys, we love you, and we're working on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Baloo?
Thank you, Vice President Gode. In terms of looking at making sure or attracting some of our best teachers to schools that have been underperforming and there may not be as much of a demand for the teachers there, would that fall under the next step?
Yeah, I think definitely. So obviously the next step is you're going to take a comprehensive overhaul approach, right? So let's take sort of the ranges that we have now, and then let's reimagine how these are going to better fit our school system moving forward. And you want to build some resiliency in there. And I think the topic that you're bringing up is something that a lot of people have been thinking a lot about lately. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we need to be sure that we keep that in mind when designing this system, that we have at the bare minimum address that, right? And how we approached it and that in our thought process. But it is a very good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll take the last bite at this apple here. First of all, thank you, Cody, and thank you, Christelle, for all the hard work that you've done on that. And also thank the staff for providing a lot of this information, Ms. Jones and her staff. One of the key things is that our current systems really don't have a good method for giving us a lot of this data on retention and things like that. So we had to resort to some innovative ways to get this data, to get this out. But just another couple of points I just would like to get across to folks. Right now, in our current salary schedule booklet that's in the budget, we have 146 different salary schedules. And then there's an other category for people who aren't on a salary schedule, people like our superintendent and others. So that's really 147 salary schedules that we have. Also, some of the data we looked at, if you go back and look at starting salaries from 20 years ago to starting salaries today, we have done an okay job of keeping up with the inflation if you use the Social Security Index as being a measure of inflation. But that is a step by step by step by thing. It might be years in between and you get another bump or whatever. And that's not a good way to run a railroad, to keep people in your organization. The other thing is that I just want to emphasize, and Mr. Russ talked about it earlier, a $225 raise, and that's for a 9-month teacher with a Bachelor of Education degree. $225 a month raise. After 5 years, you're barely making more than $1,000 than the first day you walked in. And you know that, that is not that's a couple of dollars a month by the time you get taxes out of that and everything else. And so one of the fallacies that I think we've had, particularly, I know since I came on the board, I was, had this being told to me and stuff, oh, well, we didn't give a pay raise this year, but they got their step increases. Well, to me, that should be two totally separate, distinct things. Mm-hmm. A step increase ought to honor the years of service and the expertise that you've hopefully have built up into this. And that should be separate and distinct from what is the overall cost of inflation that's coming into here. Because if you're sitting here as a teacher and you're looking at, gee, if I stay here for 5 years, you know, unless the board comes up and does something in particular, I'm looking at $1,000 a raise, $1,000 a year raise over 5 years. You won't even see that. And so we disincentivize people from staying longer. And, you know, we do lose 25% or more of our teachers every year, but the attrition rate is unbelievable in the early couple of years. And we only have, I think our data started in 2015.
Yes.
Was when we had that. I think we have only like 26% of our current teachers, and I say teachers, I'm talking about everyone on these schedules, because they include librarians and counselors. We only have like 27% of our staff that have been with us since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 75% of our people who have been hired in the last 10 years. And it's really hard to be able to build that up and build up your culture, build up the expertise, and build up these things. So I think we as a board need to understand and take it upon ourselves that we need to rethink how we look at some of this. We need to have a professional progression, and then we need to have what do we need to do about inflation and cost of living. And those need to be two separate items. Now, to be honest, there's a price tag that comes with all of this, and we have to be cognizant of the price tags, and we got to work through this. And you know, we may come up with a really good plan, but it may take us 4 or 5 years to totally move our way into that new plan, because there's the practicalities of we got to pay for it, you know, and we got to be working on that. And we're doing a lot of things around trying to improve the efficiencies of the schools and all this sort of stuff, and all these things play into that because we pay a huge price. We talked about the cost of recruitment to fill these pictures, but there's a bigger cost that we're paying. There's the cost of the kids that don't have a teacher in their classroom. There's a cost of having someone who has a substitute teacher in there for a week or a month or whatever because we don't have a teacher in that classroom. And those are the kids paying the price for that. And I really think, particularly after digging into this data, and I'm going over my 5 minutes, but I have the gavel, so I'm going to do it anyway. You know, as you go into this, we're being some of our worst enemies. You know, if we're trying to save money by doing some of this, but then on the outside of that, we're hurting the kids by doing it, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing here. So I applaud the effort, and just, you know, I mentioned all of this to you in an email earlier. The intention is, if everyone agrees, not as a motion or anything right now, we might bring it back up at the next meeting. Our intention is to put out an RFP for a full-fledged salary review and a full-fledged rejiggering of the thing. And just so people who aren't on the TI and TE schedules, we recognize that there are a lot of other schedules out there, but the teachers, we have over half of our employees are on these two schedules. So the thinking was we got to get this one right, and then we can scale all the other ones off of what this comes out to be. Because, you know, I know there are directors and stuff like that. Well, their salaries have been basically the same for the last 5 years. They have cost of living and cost of inflation too.
Right.
You know, so we have to look at this in total, and look at this across all job classifications except the superintendent. He's got to stay where he is. We have to look at this across all of these systems and all of these descriptions, and really come into the 21st century into making these things work. Because the employment arena we're in 2025 is totally different than the employment arena of 2020 or 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And when we said 2000, yeah, the salary structure's changed a little bit in those times, but the basic has been pretty much the same since the year 2000. And we didn't even go back any further, because I don't know how far it went back on that. But other districts in the state have done some innovative things that really look interesting. Jefferson Parish is one, if you want to go look at some things. So no promises yet, no things out there. Be patient with us, because we want to do it right, and we're going to be looking at the entire system. And quite honestly, it probably won't be a 1-year implementation.
That's right. You need to build a strong foundation.
Other comments from the board?
Thank you, SSA, for doing this. As Board Member Russ said, and I know you know Mr. Gode and Ms. Stewart, as well as Coach, we, day one, we began having discussions about our salary schedule and wanting to do something to improve. So I'm glad we're embarking on this journey and hope we end at a point where we are top in the region in terms of what we're able to provide as compensation packages for our teachers. Because in addition to looking at salary, we want to look at the entire compensation package, because we want to make sure that our teachers understand the salary is one thing, but the retirement, the benefit package, the entire compensation package is something we want to make that is attractive for our students in this area, for our teachers in this area. So excited to be on the journey and look forward to continuing to work together to make that happen. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move on to item D1, Broadmoor Middle Site. Consideration of request to use the Broadmoor Middle Site as an esports and athletic facility on the Broadmoor site. I understand we have a presentation.
We do. We're going to have a presentation being led by Ms. Amy Jones, and we have some outstanding young people who are going to participate in the presentation to talk about the Broadmoor Middle site. Just a little background information. The Broadmoor Middle site was approved in the 2018 tax plan, and there have been some challenges there in terms of proposed projects over the last 6 years. The conversation began 8 years ago, and there have been some challenges over the last 6 years in terms of the proposed projects. A, funding has been a challenge, but B, some of the proposals did not align with the tax plan. And so been doing a lot of research around this in terms of what we need to do. And as we get ready and prepare for our next tax plan, wanted to come up with the plan. So I called Judith early one morning. Miss Dillon. I called her early one morning and asked her to meet me at Glen Oaks Middle School, and we had a long conversation about the tax plan and the proposed site. And she and I shared with her my vision for the site. So thank you, Judith, for working with me to make that happen. And then I'm excited to share what the vision turned into this evening. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cole, and thank you all board members, and good evening. I'm excited to share with you what we have to offer in the way of a program at the Broadmoor Middle site, and that is esports and athletics. As you can see from this slide, the current site, the address, the square footage, and the offering in the tax plan of $15 million, and then what we perceive the construction budget would be. Again, this school was built in 1964, and it was closed to students in 2019. The proposal is to transform that site into a versatile, multi-purpose venue designed to meet the needs of the district schools as well as the broader community. And with that in mind, we had a meeting this past Monday night with the community at Broadmoor High School, where we had a really healthy conversation. And I thank you, Mr. Ballou, for being there. And I see a couple of audience members that were there. I appreciate you coming out and asking us some good questions and having a dialogue about the neighborhood and what they have been seeing over the past 6 years as they have waited on what would be put at Broadmoor Middle. And so a lot of that conversation involved what is esports. That's a relatively new thing in the world, but we all know that video gaming has been around since the 70s. I had Pong, I had, Atari. We all had these games growing up. But if we could marry the need for an athletic facility for our elementary programs with the need for an esports arena for this new league that we have created in this district to help our students in their achievements, then we could put together this proposal for you. So again, what is esports? It's simply scholastic esports with the integration of competitive video gaming into educational settings, such as schools and after-school programs. It goes beyond just playing games by combining gaming with the valuable learning experiences. And in our department, we started in right after COVID, with kids coming back in a hybrid and virtual world. They had gone home and sat there and stayed in contact with each other in their communities across gaming platforms. And I saw it in my own children as they, children grown, they were adults in college. They came home from COVID and played games across in the basement. So they stayed in contact with their friends in COVID. And then when kids came back on campus, we saw this huge outpouring of social emotional learning that students needed to reconnect with their peers. They needed to reconnect with learning. They needed to feel good about being back in school. And so we came up with an esports program, and we started with a 5th grade roadshow. We put together a little bit of equipment, our team, the IT bandits, and we went out into elementary schools to introduce this idea to principals, because it's kind of scary thinking about video gaming being in schools. How does that relate to scholastic performance? And we wanted to engage students to make them want to come back to school, and then also give them incentivized programs that if you're doing well in math, if you're doing well in your homework, and you're being provided the opportunity to come play games. So we started with, several schools already had esports labs, like Scotlandville High School, but we funded the first EBR technology team lab up in Northeast High, and Mr. Lannis was up there with us when we broadcast live from there with community support, and we had members from LACEF, which is the Louisiana Foundation of Esports, and they came, and we talked about what the opportunities for these high school students, because scholarships follow these kids. We've got several from our program that are already in college on scholarships, and we know that our other colleges around, such as Southern Law, have a wonderful esports lab, and we've partnered with them and learned from each other. So when we moved into having a lot of schools buy in and put in labs, and we help them. And so a community member the other night asked, well, how do you fund that? Where does that come from? Well, I've always been very questioning our vendors that if we're going to spend a lot of money with you, millions of dollars for our internet service, our switches and our routers, and all of the technology, the software packages that we put into the district for our students, then I think that they should put back into our schools and let our students know that they are important to them. So we use sponsorships to help purchase those equipments and to put in those labs. And so now we're up to over 50 schools with labs, and with that we have expanded. We started at CTEC with a monthly tournament at CTEC, and we moved from CTEC in the fall of 23. We started outgrowing CTEC. They also were putting in a culinary program, so they were taking up our space. So then we turned to where's some locations that we can beg, borrow, and steal from space, and we saw the Professional Development Center as an opportunity. And we took the show to the PDC, and as many of you have joined us there, we appreciate your support as you've come in to see what we've been doing. The kids that are participating are demonstrating every day the leadership, the soft skills, the workforce development skills that they're learning, because for us, it's all about careers and community. These kids are learning to work together, high school to high school to high school, because we have created a student ambassador program. And I'd like to bring up a couple of those students right now. We've got Andy from Southeast Middle, and we've got John from Woodlawn High School. And what in our community of esports, we've created a league, and in that league we have a student government association. And so they are members of that SGA as student ambassadors, and they're just two of many, because our league is student run and student focused. And so they take the initiative and help put the equipment together. They run the live streams. They do the brackets for the tournaments. They are doing all the work that grown-ups would do, say the Super Bowl. You've got all the people behind the scenes who are running the cameras, the audio visual, and all of that is toward workforce development. So guys, why don't you come up and tell a little bit about
ahead, John.
So esports as a whole has really changed a lot of our lives. We've been learning all these workforce skills, like learning how we can compete, how we can learn and get better with all these skills that we can use in the future in jobs and college. As a whole, I've made a lot of friends. I've learned a lot with other ambassadors from other schools. And I think right now we have about 30 other student ambassadors. And so far we have been growing. I think of last year we gained 10 to 20. And it's just keep going and going and going. We have middle schoolers and high schoolers, and we even have some high schoolers who are going to college because of esports.
Well, I'm new, but so far I've been doing production for esports, and I've learned a lot from it, like streaming and other stuff, but esports really helped me out in my grades. I now have a 3.5 GPA in my grades currently, so esports really helped me learn a lot.
All right, and so moving on, we're moving into athletics, and I'm going to ask Mr. Sean Joffrey on if he wants to come up and say a little bit about what the proposal is for the gymnasium and the track. We
Be brief.
be brief. All
Let's
right.
move with a purpose. Let's move with a purpose. If you know your items coming up, please come up. Start making your way to the front.
Just the Reader's Digest version. We do have a large elementary population of students who play athletics. So we have, on Saturdays, we have elementary sports. And if you've ever been, it's bigger than high school sports. We fill up stadiums outside and inside. We have people everywhere for soccer. For now, we're getting into track. So we've really outgrown our spaces. So it's becoming not a problem, but it's coming a conflict with those high schools who have their own things that they would like to do, but still graciously hosting us at their schools. So this site will be able to have us the opportunity to have those sports programmings there for those elementary students, as well as having a track, even for those high schools who don't have full tracks, to have their track meets there as well. So it would be a one-stop shop for our elementary sports, for our middle school championship tournaments, and everything that we do in athletics as far as it goes to elementary schools.
And so to wrap it up, we have our academic wins, our community wins, and you can see those there. Our community is looking forward to whatever we put at Broadmoor Middle, because it will be better than what's right there right now. So there's a lot of things that we can improve on there. And this is just a brief potential plan. This is very easy. Obviously, this is going to be vetted out with our engineers as we go out for proposals and bids. But as you can see, it would offer up a track, the gymnasium, and the eSport arena. So, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the public for public comments. Are there any public Not yet. Any public comments on this item? Would you check online?
Got somebody coming right now?
Oh, please, ma'am. Would you please fill out a card and state your name? Thank you much.
My name is Tammy Gascon. I live in the Broadmoor subdivision. I've lived there for the past 20 years. And yes, the middle school is an eyesore. I was at the local meeting the other night, and the comment that I made was, esports is a different way of thinking for our generation. We did not grow up, or I did not grow up, in a technology world. These kids, that's what they know. That's what they're good at. That's what fuels them. I see it as a great opportunity for these guys are precious. There was a whole slew of them at the meeting the other night. I see it as an opportunity for them to collaborate, to learn disappointment, how to deal with disappointment, how to work together as a team, and go places with this knowledge and this skill that they have. So I would like for you to give very deep consideration to go ahead with the proposal for the esports arena. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no other comments, we can come back to the board. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Vice President Gode. First, I owe the superintendent an apology. He reached out to me to give me information about the esports program. However, I was caught in a meeting, but I was able to talk to Attorney Shamlin. Originally, I had some level of concern. It had nothing to do with the esports program. Absolutely love the esports program. I love what they're doing in Northeast and other schools. My concern was the way that we would maneuver, I guess you would say, but how we would spend dedicated funding. However, after talking to Attorney Shamlin, I want you to just elaborate on it a little bit more, Attorney Shamlin, because it's the way that this program, or the way that the project was written inside of the tax plan, we don't have to worry about switching any type of dedicated funding. It's still within the confines of the language that we originally put forth, correct?
To clarify, the original tax plan is written such that it says that this money is dedicated to the Broadmoor site.
Correct.
And it has in parentheses, programming to be determined, so that's left to the board. So the money is earmarked for the site. The board determines what the use of that money will be in terms of developing the program.
Right, so I didn't say that because I want the public to understand that we're not changing anything but the site, but we are within the actual tax plan itself. I 110% agree with it. I love the idea, Super, and again, I just want to apologize to you. As I said before, I thought you were talking to the president at the time. I know you reached out to me to give me information on this. At the time, I couldn't reach back out to you, but I had talked to Vice President, I talked to President, and I also talked to the board attorney. Everything sounds good. I love this idea. The only thing I would say is this. I want this same level of energy in North Baton Rouge areas where there are same sites. I understand, as we said before, that Broadmoor had this inside of their district for 6 years, and we're moving on it. I understand we got the money to do it. But I will also say there are schools inside of our districts in North Baton Rouge that's been sitting there for 20 years. Nothing done. And it's been an eyesore too. So I just ask that when we talk about the tax plan, when we look at how we redevelop and re-envision what those areas look like, even if you're not turning it back into a school, let's put something there that our community can be proud of, and that brings value and wealth back to those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Lannis. Board Member Powell Lewis.
Thank you. First, thank you for your presentation. And Ms. Jones, I think this may be for you. My question is in regards to the track. Will this be just a track that's available for school use or our EBR school use, or will this be open to the community? Because I don't believe that they have a facility like that that's available in their area.
Well, I believe that the community use is something that is hoped for, that it is available without the constraints of all the fencing and things that they can get into the track, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when Judith and Ms. Anderson and I had conversations about what would possibly go there, it was for a number of reasons. One, to address some of our elementary concerns around athletics. Two, it was to ensure that we had an additional space, a state-of-the-art space that we could show our community the investment we're making in our athletic programming. We recognize 44 of our elementary schools do not have a gym at all. They have cafeteriums, they have multi-use facility spaces where kids are practicing and eating lunch and things of that nature, but not a full-scale gym. And we are making an investment in our elementary athletics too. Some of our middle schools need spaces to participate in athletics. And then thirdly, as recent as this year, and I'm sure Mr. Gode and the board can attest, we've seen some challenges at some of our high schools in terms of them not having facilities when floors have buckled and needed to be repaired and needing a space. And then fourth thing, it puts us in a position to be a regional facility in the event of games that need to be played when the association is looking for neutral sites for athletics. And then lastly, when we get to the community on the weekend and in the evening times, we wanted to make sure, to quote one of our board members, we use the community asset as part of the community. So it allows for members of the community to use the track as well as the athletic court. And in my conversation with Ms. Anderson, while it says basketball courts, we recognize that for some of our senior citizens, they love to play pickleball. And so we're entertaining the idea of having pickleball courts, spaces for some of our senior citizens to participate and be active. So yes, it's for the students to be able to have the resource academically as well as athletically, but we also want to make it a resource for the community as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that. You answered my question. The other, I just wanted to state, I know that you and I, Ms. Jones, we've talked about the research that supports introducing esports to special needs students, as well as this being a core type of program that will lead to workforce development. I am just so elated with the students who came forward that they are leading the work when research shows that we should have student-led activities, to the fullest extent. And this allows them to be able to see the value of a career in this area as early as middle school, if not earlier than that. So thank you for sharing that. And then the last, I know that you mentioned the allocation is 15 million, but what is the actual expected cost again? I know you shared that with us in one of the slides.
We put 11 as the construction cost.
Okay.
11 million.
Okay.
But that would then be contingent on whether or not the gymnasium is feasible for, they have to do all those studies.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm glad you shared that, because that means that there might be a difference in the amount that's left over that may be able to be used, Mr. Lannis, for some of our schools in our areas. Thank you.
Board Member Sule.
Yes, thank you. Is there a way to pull up the image of what we're hoping it'll look like? Is there a way to pull that back up? I had some questions about that. While they're pulling it up, I have been out to the esports arena at the PDC a few times, and it is awesome. I brought my own children out there, and the teenagers were just so teaching my own kids how to do things, and it was such a cool experience. Okay, I had a few questions about this. So I see where it has the existing basketball courts. Are we just leaving those as is? I don't know who that answers that question. Are we updating those?
Ms. Anderson, first I want to say this rendering is probably the elementary school version of the rendering.
Okay. That's perfect for me.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
So, Ms. Anderson, the question is, are the basketball courts going to remain as is, or are they going to be
Hello, Ms.
redeveloped?
Anderson. The existing basketball courts, are those going to be updated, or that's just going to stay what's been there?
So we'll just get in terms of what may be reused, it will just be the shell, the structure of the existing gymnasium.
Okay.
But we'll get in and really assess it to see if it's worth keeping the shell or just tearing it all down and building from ground up.
The outside courts is what you're referring
The
to,
outside
correct?
courts. Oh.
No, I don't know. I want to know what that existing basketball court, that's outdoor courts?
That is an outdoor. That is just,
Okay.
right.
Okay, and then,
Repurpose it for that same.
so where the esports arena is, that's where the building was? The Broadmoor Middle, and that's going to be knocked down? And
Correct.
something new is going to be built?
Yes.
Okay, and as for the gymnasium, that as well. All that's like a brand new building. Everything's going to be knocked down and started over?
Most of the building for sure will be knocked down, that school portion. There is an existing gymnasium attached that we will look at to see if we want to repurpose it for the gymnasium, for the new gymnasium space.
So the 11 million is based on Like, how did y'all get to that number? Whether you have to tear it down or not tear it down, that should stay the same?
So I want to clarify. The
Yes,
overall,
please.
15 million is what is allocated in the tax plan.
Okay.
So that's the overall that covers all your soft costs with designer fees, hazardous materials, abatement, so on and so forth. That 11 million is basically a square foot number. We base it on a square foot number of how large the facility needs to be, and that's how we kind of determine what the construction budget would be.
Okay, cool. I also want to clarify, Ms. Powell-Lewis, were you saying that if there's money left over, it could be moved to another site? Because
That was my question.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's not possible. All the money has to be spent at this site.
It
Is
would
that
have to be
correct?
approved. It would have to be approved by the oversight.
So let me be clear. In the tax plan in the revised statute, it states the money has to be used at the named site. Once the construction of the named site is complete, we would have to then go back to the oversight committee and ask for permission to use the money elsewhere. But when you make the attempt, when you begin the project, and in the 2018 tax plan, we named Broadmoor site as the location for the 15 million to be used. And then it gives some very specific parameters how that money can be used at that site. And then you decide what you're gonna put at the site, and you make the go forward to use the funds. If there are funds left over, we have to go back to the oversight committee and ask for permission to use those funds elsewhere. But even in doing so, they have to be used within the parameters of what has been outlined in the revised statute.
Which
And
means it
I
has to
wanna-
be used at Broadmoor?
And if I could add on to that, that 11 million is just the estimate of what the building and work would cost. That remaining funding would still be used at that site. That is what pays for your designer fees. So that full 15 million would still be used for the site.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
the full 15 million is needed for that project.
Thank you. Ms. Sule, are you done?
So, okay, so with the tax money, like, let's say this is a random number, it only costs $5 million. We can then go back to the tax committee and ask them to use the rest of the money at another location?
Deputy Smith wants to respond.
Well, let me put it in context. Are you guys familiar with Ostruma High School? Ostruma High School was a project that was not a named project in the high school. As we got towards the end of Phase 3 tax plan, there were some uncommitted funds from savings from previous projects. So what the process was is that we went back to the Oversight Committee because we had excess dollars from savings, and the Oversight Committee approved that we could use those excess funding to renovate the Ostruma High School as we see it as now. So in other words, I think the question is, can you take funds from a project, savings from a project, if once you, like Judith said, the full 15 million is allocated for that particular project. In case you come after they do their checklist and at some point you're finished with the full construction, if there are savings for that project, if there's savings, then you can go to the Oversight Committee and request that reallocate that funding elsewhere. Because we did it with the Ostruma project.
But you have to first make the attempt to use the funds at the named site in the tax plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sule. Board Member Rust.
Yeah, on those comments, I think we're a bit ahead of ourselves on that. I'd be surprised if we can build this for 15 million, but if we can save money, absolutely. And I know that in the current tax plan, there's some places where we've gone over, and there's places we've gone under, and it's all got to come in out in the wash at the end, if you will. But you know, to Mr. Landis's point, if we get to the end of this tax plan and we have money on the table, we should absolutely invest it in vacant facilities in our portfolio, because that is a huge problem that we have to tackle. I agree with that. My only question about this, I think, was I know this is really preliminary, right? Like, we just said, hey, you know, CSRS, please give us a dollar number on this ticket, and if this gets approved and approved by oversight, then they're really going to start doing the planning. What I'm curious about is, do we have any idea what this building will cost to maintain once it's open, right? Like, even just based on the cost of running a similar based facility? Like what's this gonna cost us in our general fund to operate when we have it set up and running?
Where's Kelly?
And this is just for my curiosity.
Gotcha.
You know, like, because we don't have a facility like this, does this cost $1 million a year to run? Does it cost, I don't know.
I'll be honest, I can't answer that question.
I probably can't either, but I'm going to take a wild stab at it. That's probably less than a typical school because you're not going to be there every day. You're going to have smaller groups. A lot of it's going to be outdoors. Esports is going to be run on the inside, but you know, you're going to have your basketball court, your gym. But as far as cleaning of facilities, I would assume it'd be lower because you're not going to have all the touch points. You're not going to have the mass classrooms and everything else. We will see based on utilities, water usage. I mean, that depends on the building. So,
In terms of square footage, is this comparable to an average size elementary school or smaller?
it's going to be smaller.
It's smaller. It will be smaller.
Okay. Is there going to be
Basically
any?
looking around a 30,000 square foot building.
Okay. Would we anticipate any dedicated staff for this building? Would this create positions?
No, it's not going to create positions, but we are going to move staff we currently have housed.
The athletic department?
The athletic department is housed at a school. We're going to move them there. Some of the IT department is housed. We're going to move them there. And then we're going to take staff that we have in what I consider to be uninhabitable buildings and move them to where we move staff from. We have some staff in some buildings that I just believe are unsafe, uninhabitable, and we really need to be working hard to move them.
So this checks a lot of boxes.
Yes, sir.
For the district. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Russ. Board Member Baloo.
Thank you, and I appreciate the thorough presentation, and I want to thank residents from the community that came out tonight and that were also there Monday and gave us input on the facility. Just a little history. I think Mike Goday and I were the only ones on the board when the tax plan was presented to the public back in 2018, and we didn't really comment on it, but when that was pitched, when we went around to every community talking about the different projects, the project for this site was supposed to be the Flame, new location for Flame, K through 8. And about the week before the vote of the board, it was there was some hesitation, and it wound up being pulled. But we kept this site on there. So, and then it wound up when the board approved the conservatory for the arts, which wound up being cost prohibitive for the type of facility that our former superintendent wanted to have. So, I'm glad we've gotten to this point, and look forward to seeing how it develops. So, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Baloo. Board Member Lewis?
Quick question, Judith or Ms. Lopez. How much money do we spend annually on buildings that nobody's using? That we're cutting grass on, keeping the lights on, paying security on? So we're already spending money, dead money, in buildings that we're not even using. So to pivot back to your question, I think it'll be a wash, Nathan, because we're throwing money away, good money away.
All money, good money.
And nobody, well, all money ain't good money, just depends. We can have that conversation later.
That's what I said.
We can have that conversation. No, on a serious note. Really, because we're spending money on buildings that nobody's using at all. So I think it'll be a wash, Nathan. Any idea, Kelly? Give me a number.
I have no idea, sir, but I can come up with one for you tomorrow if you'd like me to.
Mr. Landis, we had this conversation a couple years ago about money we spending on buildings that we're not using.
Mr.
Thank you, Kelly.
Mr. Gilbert, find out that amount that Coach just asked for. Work with Kelly and make sure we have a response, and let's get it out to the board members as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in the queue next very quickly. Can you tell me when Broadmoor Middle was built?
1964.
1964. My only impression about Broadmoor Middle was my lovely wife started attending Broadmoor Middle in 1964. And I would say that that building was not very good looking then, and it certainly hasn't aged as gracefully as she has. And so we need to do something with that building, and we need to get something done with that building, because it is not functional and it is turned into an eyesore. And one other comment I'd like to give is we're actively working behind the scenes, pulling together some information about coming up with the board policies and things. This is down the road, but board policies and things about unused buildings and unused facilities. And hopefully in the next 6 months, we'll have a board policy out here where buildings will have a process of what we go through to handle surplus property and surplus facilities, that they won't no longer be sitting, won't no longer, that's not good English, that they will no longer be sitting around collecting dust and vagrants through the system. So we're fully aware of that problem, and some things are being done about it. We'll be hearing more about that soon. Next, Mr. Lannis.
Motion approved.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Lannis and a second by President Stewart. Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing no comments, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct the vote?
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Godey, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege to acknowledge the former First Gentleman, Mr. Marvin Broom, who's sitting in the audience. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Next, we'll move on to item D2. Consideration request for approval to relocate McKinley High School to the Kenilworth Middle site for the 2025-2026 and 2026-2027 school years. We have an online public comment. We have video public comment. Our IT department, you got them up?
This is Storm Matthews. Commenting on McKinley High, the students of McKinley High need a safe space to continue their learning while their school is being renovated. And I think Mr. Gilbert has been doing a phenomenal job. So the question would be, is this the best option or the best that we have? If this is what Mr. Gilbert recommends, then I would agree with it. But in addition to that, I would like to say that all of Sherwood and Tara parents need to take a page out of McKinley alumni's book, because, and especially with the conversation that we just had, Sherwood and Tara children go to school with rats. They go to school standing in sewage. So we need to be in the next tax plan like McKinley is. So I need those parents and those PTO members to stand up and to make sure that they are in the next tax plan, because abandoned buildings aren't the biggest thing that we need to be worried about. The biggest thing we need to be worried about is where our children are and going to school with rats run in front of them. They don't hide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Any online comments? Mm-hmm. Seeing that, we'll now flip to the board. Are there any comments from the board? Ms. Soule.
I'm so talkative tonight.
I know.
Okay. So I had the privilege of going to the Kenilworth Civic Association meeting, which is where where Superintendent Cole is recommending that we move McKinley to, and Mr. Principal Webb went with me, and they had lots of questions, and the staff, including Principal Webb, has done a great job to address all of their concerns. In fact, that frequently asked question sheet that we got about questions that could come up at that location were all ones that were asked by the community members there that have been answered and addressed. And so I just want to give kudos to you, Superintendent Cole, and whatever staff took care of that for us. Thank you. It is super well done. I think the Kenilworth neighborhood is going to be so excited to have McKinley there. All of their questions have been addressed. Thank you for adding lights in there, all of that. And again, Principal Webb, you helped the community see how awesome McKinley is and allowed this neighborhood to see what having McKinley there will do for the neighborhood in such a positive way. And it was really cool to be a part of it. And I was really proud to be on the board in that moment, sharing with the community what EBR has to offer for high schools. And I'm excited for McKinley to get to be in that neighborhood, even just for a little while, to share what they have to offer. So thank you for a job well done. And thank you, staff, for hearing the community and making sure their concerns were met before moving a new school in there.
Thank you, Board Member Sule. Board Member Powell Lewis.
Thank you. First, just to kind of echo what Ms. Sule said, I'm thankful that we have a site like Kenilworth that can be used when we are repositioning. As of right now, Baton Rouge CVPA, I never say the acronym correctly, but they are there now, and they have also been doing a good job of keeping up the school and maintaining it, and then also allowing it to be used for good purpose. So the idea that we can continue to shift when we need to and use the Kenilworth site and repurpose it from time to time is wonderful. So thank you to our EBR staff for supporting that work. With that in mind, if we could ask Mr. Gilbert, if you would come forward, please. And thank you, Mr. Gilbert. You have shared information with us before. We have had the public to come to the mic before and mention things as far as rodents and issues at some of our sites. And I believe that we have received reports as a board that shows that all those things were completed and there are no more issues like that, but we wanted to hear specifically from you, where do we stand considering the most recent public comment?
Sure, thank you. To the Superintendent Cole, to Madam President, Vice President Godey, and to the distinguished members of the board. Since my arrival, November 8th of 2024, we've set out to really figure out what's been our direction as far as when it comes to the maintenance, the custodial piece, and really creating the environment really to be able to really drive some of those pertinent pieces, like some of the issues over at Sherwood Middle. So there has been, me and my team, we have been dedicated to a daily and a weekly cadence in order to be able to drive the pest control, to be able to drive Orkin and, the vendor being there, vendor being on site, being able to drive the action, right, as far as the treatment, as far as the traps, as far as is really seeing really where those areas are, whether it's room 119 or room 133 or in the cafeteria. So it's a continuous, we have continuously improved in that area. We haven't gotten it abated all the way, but there has been a tremendous collaboration with us and the team over at Sherwood Middle, and we're continuing to be better every day. Even to the point when we first took over, they're used to having sales or concession sales, and they had went away from it. But because of the progress, Principal Noel said, we're in such a point, Mr. Gilbert, where we can start back doing that because we've seen the improvement that we need to see, and we're continuing to see improvement. So we haven't quite reached arrival, but we're continuing to be better every week and every day on that site, and we're going to continue to drive that piece.
Thank you so much. And so is it accurate to say that we have 2 sites that are experiencing this level of pest control issue?
So it's Sherwood Middle Magnet. That's the school. That's been my point of emphasis.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Board Member Lewis. Board President Stewart.
I approve the motion.
So,
I'm a motion to approve it.
I second.
are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Madam Secretary?
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. So now, Mr. Webb, you know what you got to do. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
We now move to item D3, consideration of request for authorization for staff to advertise, accept the low bid, meeting specifications, and make the award of contract for demolition of Arlington Preparatory Academy as specified in a plan to improve facilities, technology, discipline, and compensation in the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, known as the Plan, as revised through February 22nd, 2018, or reject any and all bids for just cause in accordance with the Louisiana Public Bid Law. Do I have any comments from the public? And we have no online comments. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Vice President Gaudet. I would just say, I think besides yourself and the people who are actually inside of that building in Arlington Prep, I'm probably one of the people that is very excited to see that building come down. But I do want to give you a public apology. This is a growing moment for me. Because back in, I want to say 2019, I went on that campus and I was just so disheartened by what I saw at the time that I prematurely put out a communication. It was an all call to have this building demolished, but I didn't come to you first as a school board member, and I should have did that. I want to publicly let you know that I apologize for that, but I am extremely excited to see, one, that this building is coming down, two, no one is inside of this building, but three, we are finally getting progress on knocking down old, dilapidated buildings that have been inside these neighborhoods for just far too long. So kudos to everybody for making this happen, and also board leadership. Thank you all. Thank you both.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Board Member Lewis.
Mr. Casey. No. Quick question.
Mr. Lewis.
Have we determined yet who's going to demolish this building? Are we going to do RFQs or?
So you're talking about on Arlington?
Yes,
So,
and all the rest of them too.
So actually, myself and Mrs. Anderson, we've actually been working on that piece. We know that we already have a Banks Elementary approved, so we're going to really the same people, the same team that's going to demolish that one. We're going to use the same team. We're going to kind of just try to see if we can combine it in order to be able to get the work done. So that same team is going to demolish that property.
And I asked because of our fair share program.
Yes, sir. So
we need to make sure there's some DBE participation.
Will do,
in
sir.
This as best we can.
Will do, sir. We'll make that happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm next in the queue, and don't run away yet. The motion before the board is to provide an RFP.
Right.
And I think we need to probably follow through. I'll yield the floor to you if you'd like to jump in.
I just wanted to clarify that the item actually requires the advertising and selection via bid. So it could be the same team if they win the bid.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay. And so, yeah, I just wanted to come back and clarify that too. We will offer, but if that same bidder can lower his costs by doing both works, he's going to probably win the bid, which is fine. But, so thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, sir.
The other thing is, this is a site we desperately need to do something with because Oh, I said something wrong, Ms. Anderson.
No, I was just gonna make sure.
In case you need it.
So we talked about just because they're back-to-back and approving, we combine it and make it one project. And that way, the architect will be selected from indefinite delivery. And then we put it out for bid, package it together and put it out for bid.
So in order to do that, my suggestion would be that we have the current motion withdrawn and make the motion to say combine this with the banks. Is the RFP already going out? I don't know how
It
we.
wouldn't be an RFP. We would just advertise it and put
We
it out
just
for bid.
advertise? It's just a bid, okay. So do we have to do anything with this? We're good the way we are?
Yes, I think.
Okay. I'll take his advice. Thank you. I just also wanted to say this is a site we will never use as a school if I ever have anything to do with it, because you have to cross the railroad track, and it's a high-volume hazardous chemical railroad track, which butts up right against the school building, and it is not a place for a school that should have ever been built. I don't know why it was built there. So this is something we definitely need to do and get rid of. And given its age, it's full of asbestos, and so we need to get on with it. So thank the staff and administration for bringing this up. You have anything else to add? Any other board comments? Madam Secretary, would you please conduct the vote?
President.
No, I was trying to go with motion.
Oh, you did the motion? I'm sorry.
I wanted to do a motion, but
I think you did it already.
oh yeah, no, I didn't, but I am now. Motion.
Ms. Stewart
Second.
does the motion. No, Ms. Sule's been having a hand up. Ms. Sule's gets the second.
Third.
Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Madam Secretary?
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. We now move to item D4, job descriptions. Consideration of requests for the approval of the following job descriptions: literacy mentor, master teacher, executive master teacher, and mentor teacher. Superintendent, would you like to?
Sure. And we have some grant dollars that are going away that are funding current positions in our preparation for next year and going through the budget process earlier. We want to make sure that we are able to replace those positions with different positions to provide different levels of services. And Ms. Chief Academic Edwards is going to come up and talk a little bit more about that. Ms. Edwards.
Thank you, Superintendent Cole, Board President Stewart, Vice President Goday, and members of the board. I appreciate you allowing me to expound a little bit on the job descriptions that we're suggesting. And to Superintendent Cole's point, we had previous federal dollars through CLSD for the last 5 years that funded a certain set of instructional positions, and then we had a set of different instructional positions that were funded through other federal programs. So the goal of this really is about alignment and coherence. So what I have done is, and I will be brief for the sake of time, but just to reorient us to our strategic plan and our core commitments, and primarily around student achievement and employee development. So these positions will allow us to reorient and refocus our instructional support at the school level to make sure that we're focused on achieving our goals. And we know that our goal is to reduce the number of D and F schools and increase the number of A and B schools. And how will we do that? Primarily through ensuring that our students have a quality teacher. And how we support quality teachers is by aligning the instructional support. So all of this is around coherence. Since I've been in this position, I've been tasked with looking at our systems and our structures, making sure that we are aligning them so that we have this coherent system. So the quote that's on the screen is, if you don't rise to the level, we don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. So when we think about system coherence, these positions will allow us to do that. So what is system coherence? It is what is in the minds and actions of people individually and collectively around the work. And we know that our work is improving student outcomes. It can be achieved through purposeful action and interaction, working on capacity, clarity, precision of practice, transparency, monitoring progress, and continuous correction. So when we look into these job descriptions, they're going to do all of those things. So what conditions must exist for us to have coherent systems? We have to have alignment around vision and students and goals, and people and structure. So these 4 job description will help us to do that. We already have a clear vision around what we want our students to have, this really high quality experience no matter where they are. And tonight we're talking about the people and structure. So we want to align our peoples and structures to match funding. And you guys are, you have the privilege of helping support us with the money and policy. So we're asking you, as we look at policy with approving job descriptions, that you support us with that. So in your backup packets, you had these 4 descriptions that you've had an opportunity to look through, but just at a high level, the executive master teacher will support these systems and processes in these roles at the district level. The master teacher will do it at the school level, looking at, in terms of our instructional leadership team support. Our mentor teacher will be supporting those early career teachers and new teachers that are less experienced. But I think the quality thing to point out here is that this will be a teacher that spends 50% of their time teaching and 50% of their time coaching. And the literacy mentor is a preemptive approval that we're requesting based on the CLSD grant that we have applied for. It is really scripted in that grant what the role of the literacy mentor is and how much of their time they spend helping with teachers. I think another thing that is important for me to flag for you guys is that all of these roles outside of the executive master will be working directly within schools with teachers. So pulling all of this together, LDOE has identified like these 5 evidence best practices that support high quality education and school improvement. These 5 practices are instructional leadership teams, teacher collaboration, teaching standards, principal standards, and career pipeline. So all 4 of these positions work directly in alignment with these best practices. So as we think about your approval of these positions tonight, what's important for you to remember is that we have had a certain level of funding from the Louisiana Department of Education, where our schools, Division of Schools team has been implementing these practices, but what's been missing is the alignment of the roles. So the adoption of these new roles will allow us to align our human capital to the best practices that we have been trying to implement. Something else that would be valuable for you to think about when we're thinking about supporting teachers, out of our, and Ms. Lopez helped me with the number today, we have about 2,826 core teachers. Out of those core teachers, about 600 of them are 0 to 3 experience. So that's about 21% of our teaching population that we currently have with 0 to 3 years of experience. So it's important that we have these quality systems and structures in place on an instructional level so that we can support them on a daily basis. Something else that would be valuable for you to consider while we're thinking about it is that in our AUS schools, because these positions will live primarily in our, and I'll go to that slide, they'll live primarily in our F and D schools. About 96 of the teachers in our AUS schools currently are on temporary authority to teach, and about 16 of them are on a practitioner's license, so therefore elevating the greater need for support for those teachers. The last thing that I want to share with you is, because I know it will come up, is what are the shifts? So if we look on the left-hand side of the screen, the 24-25 instructional support system that we have as a district, we have our literacy district team and our literacy coaches that are working and supporting in schools, and they're really bound by the CLSD 1.0 grant. That grant expires this year, and we've applied for the new one, but the funding is significantly less. So we're looking at about 38 persons who were funded by that CLSD 3.0 grant. The new grant, once it comes through, will not support district level, classroom level literacy coaches in the way that it has. But the goal of it is for us to repurpose those people into on the right-hand side of the screen. So I'll go back to the left-hand side where you're looking at we had the district literacy team, then we had our district content teams, and then we have our school improvement best practices that have been led through our division of schools. So it appears that we have been working with everybody doing the same work separately. So the goal is to move in the next school year where we are strategically coordinating this instructional support through the support of that executive master teacher, where we have our district content teams and our division of school leadership teams, everybody speaking with a common vision and common language, where we are deploying our support into these different sets of schools. So for the purpose of understanding where these positions will live, we are looking at doing a pilot of schools that will be TAP schools in the next school year. We are still working with finance and funding to figure out who those schools are and which ones will benefit most from that model. Within that model, those schools would have a master teacher, a mentor teacher, and an instructional specialist. I know that the instructional specialist is not on your list for tonight, but I wanted you to have a context of the type of instructional support that we intend to provide across all of our DNF schools. In our AUS schools, we're hopeful that we'll be able to, with the funding, provide the mentor teacher role and the instructional specialist role. And in our D schools, we want to provide that same type of support. So what kind of questions do you guys have? I know that was a lot in a little bit.
Let me say this, in the other piece we want to mention, we want to downsize central office staff.
Yes.
So many of the folks who are working at the central office in some of these positions are going to be deployed to schools where we have vacancies to provide additional support. So I just want to make mention that we're not seeking to add a bunch of new people as much as we're seeking to downsize, realign, which is a common word we've been using a lot, Coach, but realign, and then deploy so that we have instructional coherence in our schools, particularly in our high-need schools. We have people who have skills who we believe need to be in schools every day working with our teachers, particularly in our DNF and AUS and label schools where we have a large percentage of new teachers. We need people on the ground modeling high-quality instruction for a large portion of the day and then working with other teachers to do the same. So I just wanted to make sure we mention that piece. And thank you, Ms. Edwards, for the presentation and all the information. But don't go anywhere in case there's some questions.
Thank you. Do we have no online comments? So we will go to the board. Board Member Powell Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this information. I wanted to ask, and maybe I missed this part, what would be the salary or stipend that would be offered for these different roles? Did I miss that?
Okay, the salary schedule that's attached with the board docs.
Okay.
In this current model, the TAP salary and stipend, we didn't bring that forth tonight. That'll come through in the budgeting process.
Okay.
But the salary for all of these positions will be on the curriculum salary schedule. So in essence, the teacher that applies for this position will be on the curriculum salary schedule. The executive master teacher will be on the director salary schedule because the criteria that we're seeking are persons with administrative experience, persons that have an EDL, because they will lead it from an instructional leadership standpoint from the district level with implementing these positions.
So then within the organizational chart, would the executive master teacher work under a principal, or?
The executive master teacher will work directly under me.
Okay.
And that is one position, but the master teacher would work under a principal along with the mentor teacher and the instructional specialist. I think the other thing to note is that we plan to do a district level job application for this. So we're going to interview at the district level with support of the principals and deploy them from the district so that we are ensuring that we have the highest quality persons in the ECs.
Okay, so then the executive master teacher, if I'm understanding you correctly, would be a district-wide position. That would not be at each school or what have you.
They would be the only district-wide position they were asking, but they would also spend the majority of their time in schools because they're tasked with supporting the master teachers across the district.
Okay.
Especially in our DNF schools, because those are the ones that we are asking for these roles for.
Okay, thank you. So with that in mind, I just want to say that I applaud our district in this. This actually, as you mentioned before, aligns with the direction that the rest of the state is going in. So we're now starting to row in the same direction. I also want to challenge my fellow colleagues to make sure that if you want to see how well this type of program works, reach out to some of the neighboring school districts, because quite a few of them have embraced this idea of the master and mentor teacher, along with this coincides with the teacher evaluation program of NIET. Am I correct?
You're absolutely right. So if you look at those components where it came down, but if you look at those instructional best practice where it talked about teaching standards and principal standards, the teaching standards are the NIET teacher evaluation, which is now our Louisiana education rubric. So we have a new rubric for teachers and a new rubric for principals. These structures and these supports align directly with that.
Thank you.
One other thing too, since you, I'm taking your point of personal privilege, since you mentioned it, if we were to look at salary schedules and staffing rosters across the state, if you look at many of them, to your point, many of them implement these positions of master and mentor. We had an opportunity as a district to take several principals, district level people, and school level people to the NIET National Conference a few weeks ago. And Dr. Walker, Edith Walker, shared in her presentation that for the first time in a long time, their parish no longer has any schools with the label of DNF, and she attributed a lot of it to these structures and these processes.
That's Ascension Parish and very similar to Iberville as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards, for the presentation. This whole meeting has given me a reason to hope for a better school district. The entire meeting, everything we've talked about in here tonight, because it has been my impression since I've been up here and before I got up here that people in this district have worked in their own silos. They got their own kingdoms, and when they felt like they were threatened, they would shut people out. To me, there did not appear to be any type of synergy across the board for student improvement. Just like the young lady, and I'm not picking on her, she stood there tonight and she read about the, golly. And she read right, she didn't even read student achievement. The first presentation we had, she talked about the budget and all that. She just left, she walked right across student success. Everything I've seen in here tonight tells me that we are trying to align this district for what comes first, and that's student success. And I said a little while ago, it seems that we throw away a lot of good money because we got it and we got to spend it. Well, let's spend it for who's intended to be spent on, and that's children. Because I could care less about an adult problem. I'm concerned about the children that we serve. And thank you for what you guys are doing. I mean, I really feel good about tonight's meeting because I think we've gotten through the woods We've got a clear vision of where we want to go. And I think if we maintain the course, I hope I'm around long enough to see it. If we maintain the course, we can get there.
Me too.
We can get there. So again, thank you. And really, I mean, I may go home and eat a hamburger tonight. I really feel so good about this. I mean, but I'm joking. But really, I really feel good about what we've done in here tonight. Better than I've felt in a long time about leaving this place. Because a lot of nights I leave this place and I'm shaking my head like, do I want to come back in here? Really. So, but again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Lewis. Board Member Ballou.
Thank you. No questions. I just wanted to thank Ms. Edwards. You clearly have a grasp of the material and the issues, but I really appreciated your passion and your clarity of purpose and just laser focus on your mission, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you. And I will just add, for those of you who had questions about the salary schedules and all that sort of stuff, there's a good FAQ on the thing with a good summary job descriptions. Thank you very much for putting that together. That's very, very helpful. And hopefully we'll make those salary schedules much easier to decipher and cleaner as we go through this. So thank you again very much.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other comments from the board, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. It's been a motion made by Board Member Lewis, seconded by Board Member Lewis. Any other board comments? Madam Secretary, please conduct a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. We now move on to item D5, resolution millage. Consideration request to adopt a resolution for the purpose of leveling millages effective on the 2025 assessment roll as required by law by June 1, 2025. And I will read the statement. Notice is hereby given that the Parish School Board of the Parish of East Baton Rouge, State of Louisiana, acting as the governing authority of Consolidated School District Number 1 of the Parish of East Baton Rouge, State of Louisiana, known as the District, plans to consider and adopt at its meeting on Thursday, March 20, 2025 at 5 p.m. at the Parish School Board Office, 1050 South Foster Drive, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the resolution as required by law for the Office of the Assessor no later than June 1, 2025 for the purpose of leveling millages effective with the 2025 assessment roll. Do we have any public comment? And we have no online comment. We will now go to the board. Board President Stewart.
I approve. I do a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Board President Stewart. Do I have a second? Seconded by Board Member Rust. Any other board comments? I have one for our general counsel, just for the public. This is this just continues the current tax rate that we have. No changes or anything. It just authorizes them to continue the tax rate that we have today.
That's my understanding. I'll let Ms. Lopez confirm that, but that's my understanding.
Yes, sir. It just keeps us on the rolls for next year.
Right. I just wanted that on the record. Thank you very much. Seeing no other comment, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct the vote?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. We now move on to subject D6, graduation agreements. Consideration of request for the approval of an agreement between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and the following. A, Southern University in the amount of $68,490 for the rental of F.G. Clark Activity Center for high school graduations. B, Louisiana State University in the amount of $58,000 for the rental of the Pete Maravich Assembly Center for high school graduations. C, Premier Production and Sound Services, LLC, in the amount of $62,800 to provide audio and video for graduation live streaming. Funding source, general fund. We do have remote, or do you have a presentation? We do have a remote comment.
Okay. Yes, Storm Matthews. Every year I ask you guys to please negotiate a later graduation time than 9 a.m. for the schools that have the morning graduations. The response is this is the time that was given. That is not how negotiations work. We are giving them very large sums of money, and we ask them to do something for the students, not the adults. And this board constantly tells us, which is a good thing, but constantly tells us it's not about the adults, it's about the students. This particular ask is 100% for students, no adults involved. The children are asking for it to be later so that they can get their hair and their makeup done. Look, I get it that that's something that we in our generation don't see as something of value or importance, but it is important to them in their generation. And last year a comment was made that, oh, but this isn't prom. That doesn't matter. This is how they choose to celebrate their graduation, and they should be allowed to celebrate it in the way that their generation does, and they should be allowed to dress themselves up, as long as it's school appropriate, in the way that they see fit. And they can't do that with such an early graduation time. Can you please send this for negotiation to give these kids a little bit later of a graduation time? Do something that's truly for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. We do have an online comment.
We have an online comment from Deborah Washington that says, why is summer school 2025 graduation not included in this agreement? And then another follow-up to the previous comment by Deborah Washington as well. This comment related to item C, only video for graduation live streaming. And that's it.
Thank you.
You can comment, please comment on the summer
Repeat
school.
the question, please.
Summer school.
Summer school, why is the graduation so late?
No, is it included in this agreement?
It is not included in this agreement. No, sir, it is not.
The question is why is
Why
it
is it
not?
included?
Because typically it's done at one of our high schools. It's not done at one of our large arenas where we can take care of that bill ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Smith oversees all of our high school graduations. Thank you so much, sir. James Smith.
Ms. Stewart.
I approve. I go to approve the motion.
Who would like to second? Lannis is second.
Got him.
Now, if you don't mind coming back up real quick, I will get in the queue to ask a quick question. I think it was a legitimate question raised about the 9 o'clock timing. Is there anything magic about that timing, or is that just what was proposed, and could we go back and ask for 11 or something?
We did set those times and communications that we with the universities based upon the things that they have to do at the universities. We did try moving those times back, but it ran into other obligations that the universities had on their campuses. And so we would not, and they were actually able to split those graduations and get the center reacclimated and ready for the following graduation come, because there are also 2 a day.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted the public to be able to hear that. Thank you very much.
Kinley is back.
Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Madam Secretary?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Move to item D7, intergovernmental agreement, Baton Rouge Police Department. Consideration of request for the approval of an intergovernment agreement between East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and the Baton Rouge Police Department in the amount not to exceed the board-approved $42 per hour to provide one full-time school resource officer at McKinley High School. Funding source, general fund.
Good evening.
Yes.
Madam President, Mr. Gode, Superintendent Cole, members of the board, we're here to ask you to approve this intergovernmental agreement with our good partners at the Baton Rouge Police Department. I have with me tonight Ms. Cheney Kent and Captain Walker, our directors of security who are doing yeoman's work every day in the district. And we ask you for this approval to provide this full-time resource officer at McKinley High School.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a virtual comment from Ms. Matthews.
Yes, sir. It is my understanding that this has always been the agreement, but that Baton Rouge Police Department has been covering the cost since COVID. So we're simply updating it and putting our new superintendent and the new chief on the agreement, and now kind of picking the mantle up, kind of, I guess, how we were supposed to have been doing it all along. Which is perfectly fine with me. Safety is obviously the absolute prime concern. I do have one concern that I hope we can ensure that Officer Coleman is able to stay in place at McKinley, as he has an amazing rapport with the staff and the students. I know that it is Baton Rouge Police Department's call on who is there, but it all just works better if the relationship is there. And from what I have been told, he truly bleeds McKinley. So Mr. Cole, if you can do what you can do, bruh, hopefully, he can still stay there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments that are here? Principal Webb?
Again, good evening. Officer Coleman is our school resource officer, and that's what he is. He is a resource to our teachers, our parents, our community, and most of all, our children. He has built a relationship with our children that is bar none. He even has a plan where what he does, he incentivizes our students by giving them rewards, and they're usually, well, they've always been monetary, just for doing well in school. He picks kids from each grade level, a boy and a girl, and then presents. If you go back and look at the slide that we presented, you will see Officer Coleman on the slide with the presentation of what he does. He creates a culture and a climate for our school that is very successful. Anything that we need Officer Coleman to do, he's there. Even today. You know what he was doing today? We had some kids that didn't have a mesh book sack. He grabbed the book sacks and he starts handing out the mesh book sack. At the end of the day, when it was time to give the regular book sacks back, he came to my office, Ms. Webb, let me get the kids' book sacks so I could give them back to them while I'm on duty. That's the type of officer that we have. And again, he has built a relationship with our entire community at our school, and we definitely want to see Officer J.J. Coleman remain at McKinley for the job that he's done to ensure our safety of our school. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other in-person comments? President Stewart, would you read the online comments, please?
The online comment is from Deborah Washington. The memoranda accompanying this document lacks clarity in both context and grammatical structure, and the numerical data appears inconsistent. That's it.
Thank you. We'll now move to the board. Any comments from the board?
Mr. Russ?
Yeah, I support any decisions our superintendent wants to make around keeping our schools safe. I just want to make sure that for the benefit of the public, it's really clear that our board has no decision-making around specific personnel. It's great to hear that you have a strong resource officer. Those decisions are up to Mr. Cole and BRPD to make. We're happy to make sure that there's a conduit to do that. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Board Member Russ. Board President Stewart.
I just want to comment and say that I appreciate the comments that Principal Webb made about the interaction with the resource officer. And I just want to ask Ms. Cheney and Mr. Walker that we can have those same interactions, that we can encourage those same interactions with the SROs at the other campuses. Because from what I hear from Mr. Webb, the interaction with the children, walking around, engaging, I would like to hear that at the other schools as well, other than what I've been hearing as far as maybe officers sitting in their cars and things like that. So I want to make sure that our officers at the other locations are interacting similar to like what's going on at McKinley. Thank you.
Thank you, Board President Stewart. No other comments? Do I have a motion?
And I got a motion to approve.
A second? Nate? Sule, okay. Come on down.
Sule, I got you, Sule.
Any other board comments?
Can I say something, Mike? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just want to say kudos to both of you. You, at this time, this juncture inside of our community, probably have one of the hardest jobs besides superintendent. Every day you turn the TV on, and I know it is a fight to try to keep nonviolence out of our schools and out of our communities. I don't even know what the words to give you, Superintendent Cole, to be honest with you. But I want to say thank you, because I don't think people understand how hard that job is, trying to coordinate a student getting to school safe and getting back home safe. And what if a student comes from a violent area? Those are the things that we have no control of dealing with. And I want to just say that my heart goes out to the family of the student that we lost at Scotlandville High School. It was beyond unfortunate. I just say as a community, as a district, we just got to do better. I know you all are working hard, but we just all got to roll our sleeves up and do whatever we can to put our arms around our students and keep praying for them every single moment that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll jump into the queue. I do also want to give kudos to our favorite advocate reporter, Mr. Lissier, because there was an excellent article in the paper today about the relationship between juvenile crime and school attendance and school grades. And I think that gives even more impetus to the jobs that we're trying to do with the help of our superintendent and staff. So thank you guys very much. I echo what Board Member Lannis has said. With that, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a vote?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. We move to item D8, right-of-way instrument, Energy Louisiana LLC. Consideration of request for the approval of a right-of-way agreement between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Energy Louisiana LLC in the amount of $22,800 to provide utility services at the rear of the Crestwood Elementary. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, do we have any board comments on this item? Board Member Rust.
I move to approve the item.
We have a motion by Mr. Russ and a second by Board President Stewart. Do we have any other comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct the vote?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. We now move to item D9, 2025-2026 Board Meeting Calendar. Consideration of a request for the approval of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board meeting schedule for the 2025-2026 school year. We do have a virtual comment by Ms. Matthews.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that the May 21st board meeting coincides with Liberty's, excuse me, with Liberty's graduation. That's all. Thank you.
I'm sorry? That's for next year, yes. I believe the Liberty schedule has not been set yet for next year, because this is for next year's meetings. Any other public comments? Any online comments? Any comments from the board? Ms. Stewart moves that we approve. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Powell-Lewis. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Madam Secretary? Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Mr. Rust.
That's okay. I was going to move to approve the item, but I'll use this as a point of information that traditionally we do not respond to public comment during the public comment period. Thank you.
You are correct. Seeing no other comments, Madam Secretary?
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. So, item E1, announcement of meetings. Regular meeting to be held on March 20, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Community engagement facility alignment to be held March 27, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Capitol Elementary. Some or all board members may attend. Committee of the Whole meeting to be held on April 3rd, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Community Engagement Facility Alignment to be held on April 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. at Broadmoor Elementary. Some or all board members may attend. And I just have one quick item of personal privilege. I would just like to, for us to remember very quickly Dr. Gaynell Young, who was the president of the Zachary School Board, who passed away unexpectedly. And, you know, I want to give our thanks and prayers to her family, and thanks for her service to the students of the greater Baton Rouge community. So I just wanted to acknowledge her before we close this meeting. So with that, Board Member Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to thank the board for the support tonight on these items. I want to thank staff for being here, even though you had to be. Sincerely appreciate you coming. Thank you so much for your efforts.
Now. Thank you.